Is it time?
It is time for us to do what we have been doing, and that time is every day.
We'll know in a very short period of time, but it looks like it could be something that will be not good. Believe me, not good.
I see issue with that. And again, hey.
You're not going to be able to insult your way to the presidency. That's not going to happen.
I don't know who created Pokemon Go, but I'm trying to figure out how we get them to have Pokemon go to the polls.
I'm Ted Cruz, and my pronoun is kiss my ass.
So when you think about it, there is great significance to the passage of time in terms of what we need to do to lay these wires, what we need to do to create these jobs.
America is a nation that can be defined in a single word. I was going to put him.
Not good. Believe me, not good.
Campaign, says Felonio est unum.
Here is the
That's
campaign
Latin.
button. There it is.
Means the Felonio is the one.
Yes, and it's a.
And it's real hard to come up with the slogans in Latin.
I suppose.
Because there's no
Est
slang
unum.
words.
Yes, and
There's
there's
no
a very
slang.
nice picture. No slang at all.
No slang.
In Latin.
He
Well,
almost got it, but the rumors got out that he had a lot of money behind him, and then the people said it was Episcopalian money. That hurt his chances because,
Yeah.
this was, I thought it would maybe be him, Cardinal Hans Schultz.
You had, in fact, I understand.
Hans is from Argentina, he is.
Right, of course.
He had some real good radio commercials. Went to Schultz, on the Vatican radio.
Hello, dissidents. Welcome one and all to a Sunday evening edition of the Do Dissidents podcast. Keaton Weiss here with Russell Dibular, of course.
Hello.
That was Father Guido Sarducci. Rest in peace, Pope Francis. And we are happy to offer our proud Do Dissidents endorsement to the next Pope, who's going to be great for recruitment, the great Pier Battista Pizzaballa, the second greatest name in the history of the papacy.
Hey,
second,
man.
of course, to Guido Sarducci.
I went to the place Carmine's here, man. I tried to get him to put a Pier Battista Pizzaballa on the menu.
Yeah,
told me
exactly.
to go fuck myself.
Yeah. They'll be singing a different tune pretty soon. But hey, thanks everybody for being here. We got Jake in the booth tonight, so shout out to Jake. Let me make sure that my settings are correct here. Yeah, no, I don't need that. There we go. That's better. All right. Well, I hope we're all coming through loud and clear. Great crowd in the house to start the show. Wow, 954 in the YouTube chat, 585 strong on Rumble to start out. Wow, you guys mean business tonight.
All right. So I met a fan up here, and I promised I was going to throw him up on the show last week, and I forgot. So, whoops. Hang on, where'd it go?
Well, it's in your slides.
There we go.
There you go.
All right. So this is Jeff, fan of the show. Met him at breakfast the other day. I've been having fun up here in cloudy, rainy, chilly Buffalo, but that comes with the territory. That's their art museum. I thought that was cool. All palaces are temporary palaces. Word to the wise. Okay, so you might see the shirt. One of the strange things about Buffalo is it's this small city, but they have all of these local customs, but it never, nationally, they never incorporated Buffalo into the national consciousness. So they got to just keep it to themselves. They didn't pick up on it and package it and market it and sell it back. So they have this thing, Dingus Day, where they celebrate their Polish heritage the day after Easter. So it's this whole thing. This is the Broadway market there on the east side that now the Polish have moved out to the suburbs, but they come back for the parade. That's like the old Polish neighborhood. The streets all have Polish names. Dude, there was like a tornado warning when this parade was about to start. I swear to God, right at 5:30 when the parade started and started on the dot, wrath of God, rain. And they just did it. Yeah, the weather here is very Midwestern, where in like 10 minutes the whole outlook can change. These guys were very beloved up here. I've never heard of them. The Jimmy Sturr Band. There are songs that I've never heard of. Some of you may have. Who the Hell is Alice? I sent this to you. I've never heard this song. Did you hear that song?
No.
Have you ever heard it?
No.
Big thing up here. I'm told it's a local thing. Very strange. Very strange. So the only thing that was playing here while I'm going to be here that won't make me want to put a bullet in my head like the Cher show was a Pink Floyd tribute band. I don't normally go to see cover bands, although I was pleased to find Harry Waters, Roger Waters' son, is part of this band, actually.
Oh, wow, that's cool.
But I really went to see the theater. Dude, this theater was up on par, probably better than any Broadway theater I know of. And show was pretty cool. But as promised, after Thursday's show, Rick James, bitch.
Rick James. That's right. Rest in peace in Buffalo. The one and only. Yeah. So that's cool. Those are cool sights. Yeah, we have a lot going on tonight, actually. We are going to be featuring a song at the end of the show called Peasant Mind by D. Zeidentrap, which was a song that was inspired by our show. And, he super chatted us last show, and it reminded me we should feature it. So we will be playing that song before the intermission tonight. We are doing the Q&A tonight on Rumble, but we do have 2 segments that we're doing on the Rumble side before the Q&A, and so you're going to want to come over for those. The obvious Virginia Giuffre, our friend Nick at RBN, had to do 3 streams yesterday because they kept getting pulled off. Talking about that, I suppose, or at least putting the wrong words in the headlines or whatever you're supposed to do. So we're not going to play that game. We'll just do it where we can do it and breathe easy. And then there was a really horrible story, a shark attack in Israel, which, look, I mean, I don't...
The sharks are working with Hamas.
Yeah, we would do that here, but I don't want to cry on YouTube. There's no crying on YouTube. I might just break out in tears from that because it's such a horrible story. So we're going to do horrible. Those 2. Yeah, we're going to do those 2.
An IDF soldier attacked by a shark.
Yeah,
you can't make it up. What's this world coming to?
It's horrible. And now what's really horrible is that now sharks are going to be an extinct species. They're just going to wipe out every single shark.
No. Already Trump approved $70 billion for shark spray and repellent and bang sticks.
Exactly.
He's sending
women and
the Navy
children
SEALs
sharks.
out.
Yeah. So that's a horrible story, and so we're gonna do that because we like to do at least 2 over there when we switch over, and then we'll take your calls. So we got a full night ahead of us. Buckle up,
for the
everybody.
intermission, we have a special tribute to our Catholic friends.
There we go. All right, we got 1,300 strong in the YouTube chat to get things going. 669 over there on Rumble. Big crowd in here. Smash that like button. Smash that subscribe button over here. Smash the follow button on Rumble. And let's get going. So, folks, last night was apparently the White House Correspondents' Dinner. But because obviously Trump boycotts those events and because they canceled on the comic, so there was no comic, it kind of came and went without much notice. The thing that went the most viral from the White House Correspondents' Dinner was this. So Alex Thompson received a special award from the White House Correspondents' Dinner for his earth-shattering coverage of Joe Biden's cognitive decline. Now, it just so happens that Alex Thompson has a book coming out that he co-authored with Jake Tapper on the cover-up of Joe Biden's cognitive decline, which is in the same genre as OJ's famous If I Did It book. It's kind of thing where you do a cover-up and then you write a book about the cover-up. But notable that the first White House Correspondents' Dinner post-Trump, or post-Trump 2, we should say, where you would think they would make the centerpiece of the evening an anti-Trump screed, a screed about democracy and values. And no, the most viral piece of this was actually an award/confession about the cover-up of Joe Biden's cognitive decline, which many might say is most responsible for ushering Donald Trump back into the White House. So here's Kristen Welker introducing the recipient, Alex Thompson, and then we cut to a brief excerpt from Alex Thompson's speech.
For overall excellence is named. The Aldo Beckman Award for overall excellence is named for a past president of the association, the late Chicago Tribune Washington correspondent Aldo Beckman.
Yeah, could have figured that out.
The award was established in 1981.
The Aldo Beckman Award is named after Aldo Beckman,
who personifies the journalistic excellence and personal qualities of Aldo Beckman: impartiality, integrity, and a deep knowledge of the presidency. The award.
You know, Aldo Beckman is who inspired me to start the podcast. I'm like, you know what? I want to be just like Aldo Beckman. I want to follow in his footsteps. So I want you guys to weigh me against the great Aldo Beckman.
It also includes a prize of $2,500. This year's award goes to Alex Thompson of Axios.
And $2,500 cash.
I was inspired by Woodward and Bernstein, but I completely misinterpreted the whole deep
The judges
thing.
said Thompson's aggressive reporting on President Biden, especially leading up to and after the Trump-Biden debate, revealed the president's cognitive decline was impacting his ability to do his job, information the White House tried to conceal.
Oh, after the debate. So after the debate, he realized that there was something wrong with Joe Biden, and that it makes him an award-winning journalist?
Hang on. So this whole book is going to blame it all on the White House?
Yeah.
And take no responsibility onto the press for parroting this line that if you claimed that there was something wrong with Joe Biden, only after the DNC decided they needed him to stop Sanders, because before that it was acceptable.
Right.
Andrea Mitchell was talking about it. Cory Booker was talking about it. Who was that? Julian Castro.
Right.
Talked on stage, called him out for not remembering what he just said. It was perfectly acceptable until they decided they had to close ranks around him, lest Bernie Sanders maybe, possibly, probably not even, might cost their fucking class a goddamn nickel in their bank account. And then all of a sudden, man, you were ableist. He had a stutter. You're a horrible person if you say something like that. Is any of that in the book? Because my money's on no.
Well, the funny thing, and this is why I call it the O.J. Simpson If I Did It Award, you'll see Thompson actually acknowledges that the media fucked up here.
Ladies and gentlemen, the White House Correspondents Association is pleased to give the Aldo Beckman Award to Alex Thompson.
Thank you to Jake Tapper for being a fearless reporting partner for a book on this very topic.
And look, Tapper's filming on his phone.
A nakedly shameless plug that Original Sin is available for pre-order.
So he plugs the book. So he says, I want to thank Jake Tapper, my partner, because Jake Tapper co-authored the book. Then he plugs the book, and then the camera cuts to Jake Tapper filming him on his phone.
It's my speech, so a nakedly shameless plug that Original Sin is available for pre-order right now.
There's Jake Tapper filming him.
Why is he talking about Arnold Palmer's penis? Why is he talking about Arnold Palmer's...
One serious note. To my bones, I believe that reporting and the White House Correspondents Association is as necessary as ever. President Biden's decline and its cover-up by the people around him is a reminder that every White House, regardless of party, is capable of deception. But being truth-tellers also means telling the truth about ourselves. We, myself included, missed a lot of this story. And some people trust us less because of it.
But now I get to cash in with this book. So it's funny. You miss the story until it's too late, and then you get to write a book about the cover-up. Even though you just acknowledged you were basically part of the cover-up. Because don't tell me you missed the story. You didn't miss the story. It was obvious for 5 years the guy could barely talk. You missed the story.
That framing is ridiculous.
We missed it.
We were misled.
Yeah.
We were misled. We're just babes in the woods, stumbling around in the dark.
Yeah.
They fed us all this line, and we all just sure you believed it.
Yeah,
sure you believed it. So if you all believed it, why was it okay to talk about the fact that there was something wrong with him all the way back in 2020? It was okay. You guys were talking about it openly, so you knew, and until it was inconvenient to know.
Exactly.
We bear some responsibility for faith in the media being at such lows.
But once again, the book is called, whatever it's called, I forget what it's called. Original
I say
sin.
this because acknowledging errors builds trust, and being defensive about them further erodes it.
Oh, wow.
Should have done better. I believe our mission is vital in a world where people are struggling to figure out what's true, and people with power are not telling the truth. I also believe that this association has been, is, and will continue to be critical to that mission.
There you have it. That is both an award and a confession in one. It's wild that they missed so much. If I were a suspicious person, I think maybe it was intentional. Yeah. Good
don't be
thought there.
cynic. Don't be a cynic.
Don't be cynical. Keep the faith, baby. Paulette Varghese Altemeyer says, limited hangout. You didn't miss it. You were part of it. Sending your questions in advance. Really? The narcissist element, he didn't miss it. He was complicit in the cover-up. I watched this in real time and will not be gaslit. The unfortunate thing is Alex would mention some of these things, but would never press or demand a follow-up. So he thinks he's earned a pass for doing the bare minimum. Well, he's earned more than a pass. He's earned the Aldo Beckman Award, the coveted Aldo Beckman Award, $2,500 cash, and a platform to plug his new book, co-authored by the great Jake Tapper. So he did okay indeed. Matt McDermott says, real talk, people trust the press less because too many reporters got more interested in selling books than holding power to account. Absolutely. There, once again, is the book, Original Sin, everybody, by Jake Tapper and Alex Thompson. President Biden's decline, its cover-up, and his disastrous choice to run again. Now, the libs didn't like this. They thought this was a horrible, wasted opportunity to bash Donald Trump. Harry Sisson says, Trump is ignoring federal courts, deporting people without due process, targeting the press, and more. Instead of focusing on that, he talks about Biden instead. Truly shameful. Blue Georgia says, hey, Alex, but the guy who said windmills cause cancer, you should inject bleach to cure COVID, and pardon J6 domestic terrorists is totally okay in your book? No, that's not what he said. Oy, these people. This is one of the many reasons I stopped reading Axios, you clown. Now, so, you know, it was a great evening for Alex Thompson, but a disappointing night for the runner-up of the Aldo Beckman Award, Joe Scarborough, for this piece of reporting about Joe Biden.
This is, and I don't really, you know what? I don't really care. Start your tape right now because I'm about to tell you the truth.
Oh boy!
And F you if you can't handle the truth.
Oh,
this version of Biden, intellectually, analytically, is the best Biden ever. Not a close second. And I've known him for years. The Brzezinskis have known him for 50 years. If it weren't the truth, I wouldn't say it. And
it just never gets old. I can watch that clip over and over again. You just find something new. That's like the Big Lebowski. You know, you watch a Big Lebowski 1,000 times, and you find something new each time that you missed every time. What was the new thing there? It's not even close. It's not even close. It's the best Biden ever, and it's not even close. So, yeah, look, I mean, all of that hypocrisy is obvious. The gaslighting is obvious. The shamelessness of intentionally missing the story, writing a book about a story, and then accepting an award about how you wrote this book about how you missed the story. I mean, it's just pretty shameless.
Yeah.
But the other piece that I think is worth discussing about this is the fact that first White House Correspondents' dinner post Donald Trump term 2 inauguration, the centerpiece of it, at least in terms of viral content the day after, was going after Joe Biden. It just shows how hated he is by the very people who propped him up, because they did him a huge favor by propping him up, making him the nominee, gaslighting people through his time in the White House, and he fucked them, and he fucked a lot of us right along with him. All through his presidency. I mean, his presidency was an absolute disaster. But, yeah, the decision to run again, you could see they are judging that very harshly. You have not seen anyone offer a single kind word about Joe Biden since Kamala lost the election. There was no career retrospective on MSNBC, which if Kamala had won the election, by the way, the liberal media would have been up Joe Biden's ass for the interview. You would have had documentaries on CNN about the evolution of Joe Biden from his time in the Senate starting in 1972. They would have gushed over him, but because the election went the other way and they blame him for it, Nothing. He is a loathed man by the very establishment that greased the skids for him to get to power in the first place. They cannot stand him. That's pretty obvious.
When I see this kind of thing, I feel the same way I feel when occasionally I stumble into, say, a modern day cop show. Because I haven't watched those kinds of things like a network cop show since I was a little kid, and my mother would have them on. And it always strikes me how they haven't changed. So
Right.
I don't watch corporate media. I'm not in the liberal ecosphere. And whenever you check in, it's amazing how little they've changed, even in the face of this.
Right.
Because watching this, I get it, the language he's speaking, and we have to take some accountability. He's doing the big, completion of the hero's journey at the end of the John Hughes movie. He's Anthony Michael Hall, having learned a lesson here.
Right.
And for anyone from the outside, it's absurd. It's absurd because it's so obvious that you're just covering up your own complicity. But because of the reaction you get from someone like Sasan, within that bubble, he's being very forthcoming. Within the world they live in, like he's really pushing the ball forward to say something like that, because the people they're speaking to are those people. That's their audience, right? So to tell that audience that's a big deal. Whereas anyone watching it from the outside, it's, oh, you found out water is wet and you wrote a book about it, and you're the one who dropped the water balloons, but you're not gonna you're not gonna talk about it. But within their world, the coding of this is, I'm acknowledging our mistakes so we can move forward together.
Right. Exactly. Within that world, it strikes them as very deep and, as you said, very forthcoming. But to everyone else, it's pretty funny. And like I said, the ceremony itself just kind of went largely undiscussed because not only is the president not there, but they canceled on the comic. They wanted to make this a very serious event. Did they do a comic last year? They did. Did they do? Ever since Michelle Wolf, they've been very hinky about having a comic. Well, they've had them. I mean, they've had them since
they didn't want. I'm almost positive they didn't the year after she appeared, and then I think they had one that was really non-threatening. I can't remember who it was.
Well, they had Trevor Noah come on at one point since then. They've had a couple, but didn't they have? No, Jim Gaffigan was the other thing. That was the Catholic event before the election, I think. What do they call that? The John something or other?
The Al Smith. Award.
Al Smith, yeah, Al Smith. I was going to say the John Smith dinner. The John Smith dinner. That's around Thanksgiving time every year. The John Smith dinner. Yeah.
Right after the Pocahontas brunch.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. Killer Hitton says, dirtbags, I think we're going to become a warlock and join the Illuminati. If it's good enough for Paul McCartney and Bono, then it's bloody well good enough for me. Sorry about the dirtbags thing. Thank you, Killer Hinton. Stoop Sign says, I put $1 on Pizza Baller for Pope at plus 700. I stand to win $7. Beautiful. Nice. Cha-ching. Victor Shakapopoulos, I read that sharks have been attacking the Israeli shore this week. That's right. Seems the axis of resistance is growing, maybe thanks to the Yemeni blockade. Sharks have been able to cross from the Red Sea. Yes, that's like, who are the orcas, right? If, God forbid, the Pope thing doesn't work out for Pizza Balla, the Phillies could use a setup man in their bullpen. There you go. Good one. Thanks
dude,
for that.
If he actually wins, that would be the funniest.
That would be great. He's got to win. How could he not win? Not only
we're gonna dine out on that forever.
Yeah, exactly.
That'll be our first book. Why we backed Pizza Balla and how we knew he'd win.
We knew he'd win. That's right. S. Gerard, thanks for the 99-cent super sticker over there on YouTube. Appreciate that. Tyler LaFlamme says, I've enjoyed your show for a while, but don't you think the coverage of Kilmar was a bit unfair? There was plenty of evidence to him being a gang member. Oh, well, that settles it, I guess. I guess we're wrong. No need to bring that to a judge or anything. We'll take your word for it. Our super chatter said he is. So there you go. All right, I stand corrected.
I have often said, there's nothing wrong with this country that abolishing due process wouldn't fix.
Yeah, right. Because he's probably it looks like it to me. Yeah.
So, he wore Chicago Bulls gear. So
poor Bull. Hey, it's a good thing the Bulls. It's a good thing the Bulls suck this year, because if they were in the playoffs, that would be a big problem. You'd have a lot of Bulls fans walking around afraid to
They'd
rip the
all be in
merch.
CCOT, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. All right. We will move right on along, folks. We got the Time Magazine interview. Yeah. So a lot of the segments tonight, or a few, have to do with the first 100 days coming to a close, and this is the first of those.
Yeah. Donald Trump sat down with Time, as is traditional. I thought his funniest line in this interview, we're not going to highlight it, but his funniest line was, you didn't interview Biden like this. If you asked Biden these questions, he would have hid under the desk.
Right.
That was pretty funny. But to more serious matter.
Time Magazine has to get with it. They got to record these. They've got to be like a podcast. I mean, I understand their print. They take themselves very seriously,
kind of
but
traditional thing.
yeah, it's some bullshit. I mean, get with the times already. You going to make us read this whole thing?
I think it's fine. You have to understand. Okay, so he claims that he's making these deals and he's going to have it wrapped up in 3 to 4 weeks. And he's being asked about the tariffs. He says, you have to understand, I'm dealing with all the companies, very friendly countries. We're meeting with China. We're doing fine with everybody, but ultimately I've made all the deals. And the questioner asks, not one has been announced yet. When are you going to announce them? I made 200 deals. You made 200 deals? 100%. 100% he's made 200 deals. So this commenter pointed out, there are 195 countries in the world, but Trump has made 200 deals. Now, Scott Bessent, and I can't say this enough, George Soros's protege. I thought we all hate George Soros, but Donald Trump, the fighter against the deep state, picked George Soros's golden-haired boy who helped him crash the British pound as his Treasury Secretary. You know, a more cynical person than myself might say the fix is in. But he was asked about this claim.
Has made 200 deals on tariffs. 200 deals? Who has he made deals with? Is there actually any deal at this point?
I believe that he is referring to sub-deals within the negotiations we're doing. And, Martha, if there are 180...
But those aren't actual deals.
Martha, if there are 180 countries, there are 18 important trading partners. Let's put China to the side because that's a special negotiation. There's 17 important trading partners, and we have a process in place over the next 90 days to negotiate with them. Some of those are moving along very well, especially with the Asian countries.
So he's basically saying he's calling the deal points deals. So, you know, you could have 200 deals with one country if that's how you're going to calculate things. So moving along from the 200 deals. So he was asked specifically about China calling him. Will you call President Xi if he doesn't call you? No. You won't? Nope. Has he called you yet? Yep. When did he call you? He's called, and I don't think that's a sign of weakness on his behalf.
This is like a Bob Dylan interview with all the one-word answers. You know,
where
do you get your inspiration? Your guess is as good as mine.
I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't even know why I'm talking to you. What's really funny here when you put it in the context of he's almost certainly lying, to say something like this, when did he call you? Hey, he's called it. I don't think that's a sign of weakness on his behalf. What a fucking lying scumbag. But you would think it's a sign of weakness if you called him.
Right,
I don't.
exactly, yeah.
I just look. Well, what did he say? If people want to, we all want to make deals, but I am this giant store. It's a giant, beautiful store, and everybody wants to go shopping there. And on behalf of the American people, I own the store, and I set the prices, and I'll say, if you want to shop here, this is what you have to pay. This period of uncertainty will be over in 3 to 4 weeks. He says that earlier in the interview. I don't think there's any uncertainty there. The only thing, they have an option. They don't have to shop here. They can go someplace else, but there aren't too many other places they can go. You understand what I mean, though? Okay, so that's basically a layman's way of saying what Bessent has been saying. There aren't a lot of markets where China can really unload the amount of goods they have to unload to keep their economy going under its premises. That's been Bessent's line, that they simply have no choice but to deal with us. The idea that they will not repeat the century of humiliation and they would rather go through economic hardship, that these people never factor in.
Right.
That maybe they would just rather go through economic hardship than to give in to you. That never comes up with these people. So China, the day before this interview dropped, China had actually addressed, because Trump has been indicating for a while that they're having conversations with China, which China repeatedly has denied. These are false information. As far as I know, China and the U.S. have not consulted or negotiated on the issue of tariffs, let alone reached an agreement. This tariff war was initiated by the U.S., and China's stance is consistent and clear. We will fight if fight we must. Our doors are open if the U.S. wants to talk. Dialogue and negotiation must be equal, respectful, and reciprocal. Now, Trump, after word came back, after the interview dropped, that China denied that Xi ever called him, he was asked about it.
This morning, you said you spoke with President Xi. Have you spoken to him since the tariffs? When did you last
I don't want to comment on that, but I've spoken to him many times, yeah.
Time magazine that President Xi called you. When did that happen and what did you discuss?
I'll let you know at the appropriate time. Let's see if we can make a deal.
China, once again, in response to the Time interview, same day, same spokesperson, Zhu Jiakun, my apologies, I'm sure I'm murdering that. Yesterday, my colleagues from the Ministry of Commerce and I have already provided a clear answer to this question. There has been no consultation or negotiation between China and the United States on the issue of tariffs, so the U.S. should not confuse the public. So Scott Bessent also got asked about this by Martha Raddatz.
About China, President Trump again said he's spoken to President Xi of China and negotiations are ongoing, but China has firmly denied this, saying that China and the U.S. have not consulted or negotiated on the tariff issue. So are negotiations actually happening? Who is talking?
Look, this was IMF World Bank Week, the NDC, as you know, and I had interaction with my Chinese counterparts, but it was more on the traditional things like financial stability, global economic early warnings. I don't know if President Trump has spoken with President Xi. I know they have a very good relationship and a lot of respect for each other. But again, I think that the Chinese will see that this high tariff level is unsustainable for their business
Why would
model.
they deny that the negotiations are going on?
Well, I think they're playing to a different audience.
So they're actually going on. There's actually things happening that the Chinese are just denying, but it's not true.
That we have a process in place. And again, I just believe these Chinese tariffs are unsustainable.
Okay, according to Bloomberg, you said...
Because of the Chinese business model.
According to Bloomberg, you said recently that a comprehensive deal between...
Okay. All right. So Trump's lying. He's certainly lying. You can clearly see Bessent's body language. He's dodging it. He clearly knows that the boss did not talk to Xi. I think we can fairly infer that from all those clips. So moving along to Abrego Garcia, when you and I spoke last April, are you still committed to complying with all Supreme Court orders? Sure, I believe in the court system. The Supreme Court ruled 9-0 that you have to bring back Kilmar Abrego Garcia. You haven't done so. Aren't you disobeying the Supreme Court? Well, that's not what my people told me. They didn't say it was. They said it was the 9-0 was something entirely different. Let me quote from the ruling. The order properly requires the government to facilitate Abrego Garcia's release from custody in El Salvador. Are you facilitating a release? I leave that to my lawyers. I give them no instructions. They feel that the order said something very much different from what you're saying. but I leave that to my lawyers if they want, and that would be the Attorney General of the United States and the people that represent the country. I don't make that decision. Have you asked President Bukele to return him? I haven't. He said he wouldn't. Now, by the way, right there, he's violating a Supreme Court order.
Right.
I think facilitating, calling up the leader in question to ask for the return of the person would be the least that would be expected under an order to facilitate their return. Did you ask him? But I haven't asked him positively, but he said he wouldn't. But if you haven't asked him, then how are you facilitating his release? Well, because I haven't been asked to ask him by my attorneys. Nobody asked me to ask him that question except you.
Well, you were told to ask him that question by the Supreme Court, actually. You were ordered to ask him that question.
Exactly. So then he goes on about he's MS-13 and so on and so forth. And then this is how the interviewer responded. Maybe, but Mr. President, whatever he might have done, whoever he might be affiliated with, doesn't he deserve his day in court? Nazi saboteurs who came on our shores at Montauk during World War II had their day in court. Al-Qaeda terrorists had their day in court. Trump. I really give that to my lawyers to determine. That's why I have them. That's not my determination. It's something that, frankly, bringing him back and retrying him wouldn't bother me. But I leave that up to my lawyer. You could bring him back and retry him. Interview. That's exactly right. You could fix this simply by bringing him back and going through the legal process. Trump. But I leave that decision to the lawyers.
Jesus.
At this moment, they just don't want to do that. They say we're in total compliance with the Supreme Court. Interviewer. What about the lower courts? Are you committed to complying with lower courts? Sure. All courts. Sure. Now, okay, so Trump here is saying that he's either too stupid to understand the policy that is being enacted in his name, or he's pretending to be that stupid. As this commenter points out in the Time interview, Trump claims that his staff told him something different about the SCOTUS Garcia decision, which means that Trump is either too stupid or doesn't care to know better. Now, for anyone who's been following this, and I think most of you have, you know that Stephen Miller in particular and his staff in general has been trying to distort the Supreme Court's caveat that they weren't sure they could order the return because it involves a foreign government. And they're trying to conflate that into they ruled that they don't have to bring him back, even though, and this includes Alito, Thomas, you got Clarence Thomas ruling that you have to, up to the point that they felt they would not be impinging on foreign policy, they gave as stern an order as they could that they had to bring him back without ordering, say, a military mission, which they felt probably rightly is outside of their purview.
Right. Sorry, is it okay if I chime in? I don't want to break your flow.
Let me get into
right,
this, and then we'll have a break.
Sure.
Okay, so now when I was researching this wasn't in direct response to this, but this just dropped from The Atlantic. Make of it what you will. It's anonymous sources, but it does seem to track pretty well the way that the administration has the kinds of statements they've issued and the evolution of their narrative around this. Now, there's the possibility he's just dumb, which I wouldn't buy that. I think it's always a mistake to assume people who have been wildly successful in competitive fields are just stupid. I don't think he's stupid in the true sense. Another possibility here is this is coming from Trump. This is coming from Trump, and that's basically what they assert, or at the very least from the executive branch. Because according to this article, they didn't start out this way. In the days after the administration first discovered its mistake, instead of trying to foreclose Abrego Garcia's return, officials looked for ways to bring him home. They puzzled over the fragmentary evidence tying him to gang membership, and they worried about his safety in a prison where he could be targeted for attack. A lawsuit filed by Abrego Garcia's family sparked urgent conversations among attorneys at the Departments of State, Justice, and Homeland Security who were involved in formulating the government's response. These conversations show that U.S. officials initially sought to resolve Abrego Garcia's case quietly and ensure his safety through the conventional diplomatic channels they've used in other cases involving a mistaken deportation. This time, though, their efforts were abruptly halted. As criticism of the administration over its mishandling of the case spread, White House officials took over the response and began striking a far more strident tone in their public statements. They swiftly turned an admission of bureaucratic error into a political opportunity, a chance to flex executive authority and test the judicial branch's ability to restrain presidential power. Abrego Garcia's deportation became far more than just the case of one man. It developed into a measure of whether Donald Trump's administration can send people, citizens or not, to foreign prisons without due process. Now, that tracks for me, because if you remember, when they first deported him, you didn't have all this superheated rhetoric about we're absolutely never going to bring him back and he's MS-13. You didn't get that. That kind of evolved. The more media outrage there was about this, the more politicians, Democrats obviously, spoke out about it, the more they dug in. And having watched Trump across a decade now in a political context, this is very John McCain. Oh my God, I prefer soldiers who didn't get captured. He said that about John McCain. What did he do? He doubled down, he tripled down. This is very consistent with Trump's personality, that once he saw the backlash, he decided to go to the mat over his right to do something like this. And like the coward he is, he's blaming the people around him. He's blaming the lawyers and not taking responsibility for it.
Yeah, and by lawyers, I mean, he even dropped Pam Bondi's name there as, his lawyer, because she's the chief prosecutor. So by his lawyer, who's he talking about? You're talking about the attorney general who you nominated because you trusted her to loyally implement your priorities as attorney general. Like, that's hard from, hey, I defer to my lawyer Sal here. He's going to handle. Like, that's not exactly.
He's not a buck stops here kind of guy.
Exactly, and the whole punting to the lawyer is not really the deflection that he thinks it is, because who are the lawyers? The lawyers are people who work for him, and they know what his priorities are. But yeah, no, I do think the strategy evolved because if not, they would have never said that this was an administrative error to begin with. Because by doing
would have admitted that.
They handed them this whole issue. That's what opened this whole can of worms. Well, if you made an error, if by your own admission you made an error, why don't you undo that error? And then, as you just said, when they press him to undo the error, well, no, fuck you. That's when arms crossed. No, that's when the Eric Cartman kicks in. No, I'm not going to undo my error. Fuck you. And so, and I just have to say, because in terms of the SCOTUS ruling, 9-0 saying that he has to facilitate the return of this man. We saw in real time him ask Stephen Miller when Bukele came to Washington, and I believe it was Caitlin Collins who asked the question. He asked Stephen Miller, hey, Stephen, can you explain the court ruling? And then Stephen Miller went on this completely distorted interpretation of what the court ruling was.
Completely vindicated.
Yeah, right. Exactly. So when Trump says that, hey, my people are explaining to me that we won the court ruling, I actually think there's a better than 50-50 chance that he's telling the truth about that. That is nowhere near a good excuse. You're the president. You're the president. Oh, I have this little gremlin who told me that we won the court case, and so I don't know what you're talking about. We don't have to do it. I mean, in what universe does that even approach validity? It's not a valid excuse. The court ruled against you unanimously. You have Stephen Miller, a complete lying just rat, make up that you won the court case, and I'll take his word for it. Like, that doesn't cut it. I'm sorry. Like, obviously.
Yeah, that's plausible deniability.
Exactly. So whether he is punting to Stephen Miller or to Pam Bondi, he's clearly showing that at best he's not interested in taking charge of this case. But at worst, I think your interpretation is right. I think they started out, loosely admitting, yeah, this was a mistake. They probably didn't expect anybody to put up a fight over this. I think they thought they had the Democrats so cucked on this issue that the Democrats would be too afraid to make a stink about it. And then when a few of them did, they figured, well, now we can pummel them on this issue because they're so arrogant that they have the public on their side on the deportations issue, which, as we'll get into in the next piece, they don't anymore. But they're so arrogant that they thought no one would really challenge them on it. So, we let that slip. That was a slip up. We shouldn't have called it an error. Never admit your mistake. We'll probably get away with it. Oh, you're coming at us? Well, if you're coming at us, we're going to come at you. And now it became this standoff.
Right. And this is in keeping with the whole, when you look at the people around him, like J.D. Vance, who are aficionados and disciples of Curtis Yarvin. This is in keeping with that whole playbook, and big part of that playbook is undermine the courts. Undermine the courts, don't follow court orders. They've kind of been playing around the edges of that. Like, yes, they're in defiance of court orders, but they won't straight out say yet, you've issued your order, now try to enforce it. They haven't straight out said that, but their actions say that increasingly.
Right.
So now this one didn't get a lot of attention.
Yeah, let's set this up again because we're probably going to clip that separate since that was a long piece. So just talk about this is the Time Magazine interview, whatever. Yeah.
This is the Time Magazine interview, the traditional 100-day interview. This part didn't get picked up a lot, but I think it gives you a lot of insight into what a consummate bullshit artist Donald Trump is. I've often shared the story when I went to what we call Braga, the Bronx MAGA rally. A woman passed out, and so they stopped the event, and Trump just stood there at the podium. He just started riffing. He said, it's terrible. People have been waiting for 2 days to get in. Nobody waited for 2 days. I got there at like 1. I was front row.
Right.
I was right by Trump. So he just bullshits right off the top of his head. That's something you really see with him the more you watch him. This is a great case of that. And it's incredible what he says. Some Republicans are considering raising taxes on millionaires in the package you're planning to pass that would extend your 2017 tax cuts. Do you support that idea? Well, I'll tell you, I certainly don't mind having a tax increase. And the only reason I wouldn't support it is because I saw Bush where he said, read my lips, and he lost an election. He would have lost it anyway, but he lost an election. He got beat up pretty good. I would be honored to pay more, but I don't want to be in a position where we lose an election because I was generous. But me, as a rich person, would not mind paying. And we're talking about very little. We're talking about 1 point. It doesn't make that much difference. And yet I could see somebody trying to bring that up as a subject and, say, oh, he raised taxes. Well, I wouldn't be really, in the true sense, I wouldn't. I'd be raising them on wealthy to take care of middle class. And I love that. I actually love the concept, but I don't want it to be used against me politically because I've seen people lose elections for less, especially with, the fake news. Wow. What a string of bullshit. So you would raise taxes on yourself because you love the people so much. But, it would be very unpopular with the people to raise taxes on millionaires. That's what all the polls show. They hate the idea of raising taxes. They're going to say, God damn it, he raised taxes on millionaires and billionaires like himself. God damn it. And also, you can't run again. So what are you even talking about? How would that even hurt you? What a bunch of bullshit. Yeah, I would raise taxes on the rich, but it might be politically unpopular. Wow. So that's a funny little insight into what a just degenerate lying scumbag this man is. But this is what probably got the most attention. You said you would end the war in Ukraine on day 1. Well, I said that figuratively. And I said that as an exaggeration because to make a point, and it gets, of course, by the fake news, unintelligible, it says, Obviously, people know that when I said that, it was said in jest, but it was also said that it will be ended. Now, look, man, whether you like Trump, hate Trump, whatever, I know nobody's gonna buy that he was kidding about ending Ukraine on day one. He was quite emphatic about it. CNN did a fact check. 53 times he said he'd end the Ukraine war within 24 hours. Just a few examples here. Trump sometimes emphasized that he was speaking literally, scoffing at critics who said he couldn't end the war that fast. Quote, I'll get that done within 24 hours. Everyone says, oh, no, you can't. Absolutely, I can. Absolutely, I can. He said at one July 2023 rally in Iowa. He said at a Pennsylvania rally later that month, before I even arrive at the Oval Office, shortly after we all together win the presidency, we will have the horrible war between Russia and Ukraine settled. It will be settled. The war is going to be settled. I'll get them both. I know Zelensky. I know Putin. It'll be done in 24 hours. You watch. They all say that's such a boast. It will be done very quickly. Does that sound like he's kidding around? Hey, if you're kidding around, you say, obviously it's going to be more complicated than that, but I'm just saying that, I'll get the process. No, it was very clear, very clear. So now this here, the way he closes this out is a very good example of what I think it was Dave Chappelle who said Trump is an honest liar. Part of the reason Trump won is because these mainstream figures like Harris, like Biden, they're really not fundamentally any more honest than Trump is. They just lie in ways that they'll be less challenged by the media on, like Ukraine is winning, right? Like that's a pretty outrageous lie, but it has a lot of institutional support, that kind of a lie. Now, Trump, because those aren't really the kinds of lies he tells, he'll very often tell the truth about those kinds of things, which he does at the end here, and it's something you'd never would hear any establishment Democrats say. Certainly no one with any power in that party. If Putin is president, can there be peace? So the question is, can there be peace if Putin is president of Russia? Trump, I think with me as president, there's possible, if very probable. If somebody else is president, no chance. Interview. If Putin can make peace, Trump, yeah, I think Putin will. I think Putin would rather do it a different way. I think he'd rather go and take the whole thing. And I think that because of me, I believe I'm the only one that can get this thing negotiated. And I think we're a long way. We've had very good talks and we're getting very close to a deal. And I don't believe anybody else could have made that deal. Interviewer, do you believe peace is possible if Zelensky is still president of Ukraine? Yeah, I do. He is president now, and I think we're going to make a deal. Should Ukraine give up any hope of ever joining NATO? Now, here's the interesting part that you never would have heard from Harris. I don't think they'll ever be able to join NATO. I think that's been from day one. I think that's I think what caused the war to start was when they started talking about joining NATO. If that weren't brought up, there would have been a much better chance that it wouldn't have started. Now, not only in the corporate media and in the Democratic Party as a whole have they not been willing to say that, they've treated that as a wild conspiracy theory. That's been the kind of thing that they've essentially censored and suppressed any conversation around when it is obviously, literally, historically true. Because they do not want to allow any nuance into the conversation about how that war actually started. And they certainly don't want any discussion about their role in the Maidan coup that really directly set off this chain of events. Anything before we move on?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's obviously true, but I mean, it's so unbelievable that he would say, yeah, well, I said it in jest that I would end it in a day. Yeah, I was just joking about ending World War III. I said I would stop World War III. I was just kidding around with you. Where's your sense of humor?
Well, that's what I'm saying. I mean, they're all liars, So when people step back and say, how did people vote for this liar? Well, they decided they liked his lies better. At least he's funny. And at least every now and then he tells the truth. But
Well,
yeah,
also, that
I mean,
was a lie that was like...
he's an incredibly just prolific pathological liar. Like he just patters off. That's why I always bring up that story, because did he have that plan to say people were waiting 2 days? No, it's his nature. Like that's his default. Like he'll just make some shit up off the top of his head. And that's what he does through a lot of this interview.
Well, yeah, and even in that example, I mean, to say I'm going to get it done in 24 hours, first of all, there were a lot of people who did take him seriously, and if not literally, at least seriously, right? This has been a whole thing since Trump ran in 2016. Should you take him seriously but not literally? Should you take him literally but not seriously? Blah, blah, blah. But I think people would have given him some grace if he demonstrated a strategy to getting the war ended. I mean, so far he's berated Zelensky in the Oval Office, which was gratifying to see. But beyond that, he really hasn't demonstrated that he knows how to end the war. And now Russia has their own interests, and Russia is winning. And now Russia is giving him a hard time because, you know what? They lost a lot of men in this war. And so did Ukraine. And so both of these parties are very dug in. One is clearly winning. One is clearly losing. But at this point, it's going to take some actual know-how to actually get the violence stopped. And all this chest pounding about what a great businessman you are. Hey, trust me, I know both of these guys.
Nobody else could have done it.
No one else could do it.
Hey, he's still talking that shit.
He's still talking it. Meanwhile, we're nowhere near a deal now. Now he's talking about how pissed he is at Putin. So he was berating Zelensky a few weeks ago. Now he's pissed off at Putin because Putin's taken too much, he feels like. He clearly has no idea how to do it. Like the specifics of the claim, 24 hours, people would have given you quite a bit of grace on that if you demonstrated some strategic skill here. But you're not. You clearly don't know how to get this war wrapped up.
Well, at the Pope's funeral, he did meet with Zelensky. We don't have the details yet. White House Communications Director Stephen Chung said more details will follow. We'll see. Now, I got to say, man, this guy must live in the safest freaking district in the country. Because Louisiana Senator John Kennedy, he is constantly just throwing a wood shoe into the machinery of this White House's narrative, like, on whether it's tariffs or whether it's foreign policy. Man, this guy must his seat must be Elon proof in that district.
Putin has reneged on every promise that he has made to President Trump. His latest proposal is, well, nothing. He wants to keep all the territory that he's taken. He wants to prohibit Ukraine from joining NATO, and he wants America and Europe to stop helping Ukraine. I think that Putin thinks that America has taken the bullet train to Chunktown. I think he thinks we're afraid of him. He has jacked around President Trump at every turn. He has disrespected our president. I don't think it's going to get any better until we make it clear to Mr. Putin that we are willing to turn him and his country into fish food. And I'm not talking about nuclear weapons or nuclear war. I would start with oil, which I will be glad to talk about if you want.
Right after this, he announced plans to do a folksy phrase-off with Dan Rather for charity.
Yeah, exactly.
So get your tickets for that. Yeah, man. I mean, this guy really doesn't seem to sweat this White House, because although he's speaking in defense of Trump, that's way off message. He doesn't. Trump doesn't really come off well in that characterization that Putin is playing him, which we all suspect, because clearly, again, I think it's a mistake to dismiss a guy who came back from multiple prosecutions and an election defeat to be the second president to ever serve non-consecutive terms. I think it's a mistake to just write him off as stupid, but Putin's a grandmaster. You know,
Well,
Trump ain't shit for Putin.
Well, I mean, just look at the seriousness gap. I mean, not only between Trump and Putin, but between Trump and this guy here. I mean, look at this guy. Now, let me tell you, you think we're on the bullet train to Trump Town? I mean, it's a joke. It's a joke, of course. And it's pretty obvious at this point that this situation has gotten beyond his control, which is why his favorability rating, even on this issue, is now way underwater, because everything from tariffs to immigration to the Middle East to Ukraine is just up in smoke. Like, this has been such a disastrous first 100 days. I can't think of a presidency that's gotten off to a worse start than this one in my lifetime.
No, he had
point for point. I mean, obviously, this is 3 months old. We've had 8 years of George Bush. The final scorecard will be written in the future. But in terms of the first 100 days, yeah, this is by far the worst. By far the worst. Nothing's gone right. Not a single thing has gone right.
Well, because this administration is really just a ship of fools.
Yeah.
It's just a bunch of arrogant, cocksure, move fast, break things, just congenital assholes, weirdos, freaks, sex maniacs, just weird fucking people. I mean, the reason in the end the weird thing didn't work for the Democrats is because they're plenty fucking weird themselves. But were they wrong? This is a pretty weird fucking crew from freaking Levitt over there, married to the 60-year-old. To Kennedy, who God knows what they have on that fucking guy.
Right, yeah.
I mean, it's just a crew of wackos and weirdos who seem to think they could just go in and just do stuff, man. We're just gonna go in, we're just gonna break the place up. They just went on to break up the furniture and throw it in the fireplace. And the effect of it is all of the drawbacks of fascism without the benefits, without the trains running on time. I would love to say, people are rejecting this administration because of their fascism and their violation of rights. Let me tell you, man, if they went in there and made Social Security better, like didn't just come up with pretexts of fraud to make it worse, like actually made it better. We're going to increase benefits for the elderly. You know what? We're going to fix the medical system. You know what? What did the Nazis do? Not that I'm supporting them, but why did people support them? They went and they built the Autobahn. They put people to work. These are the things. People don't just wind up falling from these liberal democracies that are very chaotic and dysfunctional at the time that they fall to fascism. They don't just turn to fascism to see the daily drama and see people deported. They expect to get something out of it. What are you getting out of this?
Right. That's what opens the floodgates. When people realize that they're being economically screwed over, that opens the floodgates. And then the other stuff bothers them more because there's no trade-off. There's no payoff.
Right. Made the trains run on time. Not only are these guys not making the trains run on time, they're ripping up the tracks and selling them for scrap metal.
Oh, this is fascism where the wheels fall off the truck, where the Cybertruck falls apart. Exactly.
Where the panels are glued on.
Yeah, exactly. Fat, not so fat. So in June, $9.2 trillion in debt will be refinanced at a higher rate. My guess is the Fed will manufacture a crisis to lower rates. There's quite a bit of banks that are over-leveraged in CRE loans. Well, when it comes to manufacturing a crisis and things like that, I mean, as Trump's approval rating dips and dips and dips, the risk of that gets higher and higher and higher. George W. Bush had a horrible approval rating in August of 2001. I'll let that hang in the air. Racecar789, thanks for the $20. Great Sunday live stream. Thank you, Racecar789. Appreciate that. David Santucci, thanks for the $20. New drinking game. Take a drink every time Besant blinks and have your stomach pumped. Thank you, David Santucci. Appreciate that. Barefoot Pookie, thanks for the $9.99. Says, first time donating. Keep up the good work. Well, thank you, Barefoot Pookie.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. Victor Shakopoulos says it's called Smigus Dingus or Laney. I'm not even going to attempt that one. Sorry, man. You got to call in and give us a little Polish lesson there. Now try to pronounce it. Oh, Ponitsalik. Tell me if I got it right if you call in. Is it the tradition of throwing water at each other on that day alive in there?
Yeah, man. They had the big super soakers on the floats.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
Have you seen that,
man?
Have you seen that Sharon Osbourne is demanding the U.S. revoke visas for Northern Ireland, West Belfast hip-hop group Kneecap, who displayed a Fuck Israel, Free Palestine backdrop at this year's Coachella? Oh, she is?
Yeah, and you're married to Ozzy fucking Osbourne. I mean, it's just amazing when these people turn censorious.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Apparently, Cardinal Pizzaballa ordered 1,000 pies to conclave as a prank. His hope at being the next pope is slim. There you go. Thank you, Ken. Appreciate that. The Pizzaballa. Let's see here. Furrows Queen says Norm Macdonald is the greatest comic from the Correspondents dinner. He said Hillary was a poisonous witch. Saw the Pink Floyd Pompeii film. Awful, but I realized I don't like Pink Floyd, so Thank you, Furrows Queen.
If you actually go to Pompeii, you go to that amphitheater, they have an exhibit about that concert.
Oh, interesting. Okay, where are we at here? All right, beautiful. Okay, folks, we are going to move right along here. A couple orders of business. Number one, 750 likes on YouTube. And a very healthy size crowd of 2,438, which is good for one of these. Smash that like button, folks. Let's see if we can get to 2525. Looking pretty good for that tonight. And a nice crowd on Rumble, too. 1,400 strong in the Rumble chat. Okay. All right. Let's talk about... So we have some more coverage of Trump's first 100 days as the first 100 days in office come to a close. Most of the major polling outfits put out first 100-day polls, and they are not good. Believe me, not good. Trump has lowest 100-day approval rating in 80 years of the presidency, according to the ABC News poll. So if you look at this is the ABC News Washington Post poll, an approval rating at 39% overall. 39% overall. It's funny, this is one of my prediction trackers. I said by the end of the year he'll be down to 40. Well, it looks like he's at 40 right about now. Which is about the average of these latest round of 100-day polls. The economy since Trump took office, only 21% say better, 53% say worse. Prices for things you want or need, 62% prices going up. Likelihood of Trump's policies causing a recession, 72% say it's likely Trump's policies will cause a recession. This is about as miserable as it gets from a polling standpoint. So here it is. Here's the history of the last 80 years. As you can see, the presidential approval ratings in the first 100 days, Donald Trump turned to lowest in 80 years. Views on Trump and his administration's actions. If we look at this, 65% say he's trying to avoid complying with court orders. 64% say he's going too far to expand presidential power. 62% say he doesn't respect the rule of law. 58% says concerned he'll do too much to reduce the size and role of government. So a repudiation of Doge there. 56% has gone beyond his authority without justification. And 55% say he's not committed to protecting Americans' freedoms. So these are the more conceptual, philosophical questions. And as we got into in the last segment, people will tolerate just about all of this if they feel like they're in good hands economically. But if you look at these numbers, when they're not in good hands economically, then everything else becomes an issue. People will forgive a lot in a good economy. They'll forgive almost nothing in a bad economy. That's what doomed Joe Biden. That's ultimately what doomed him. And now you're seeing 3 months in, looks like it's dooming Trump. So that was one poll. The other poll here, AP NORC poll from the University of Chicago, same thing. 39% overall approval rating on the economy, 37% overall approval rating, 27% among independents. That is dreadful. 26% overall approval rating among independents. That is absolutely dreadful. On trade, 37% approval rating, 29% among independents. Only 68% of Republicans approve of these tariffs. That means 1 in 3 Republicans don't approve of the trade war. Foreign policy, again, miserable, 38%, 26% among independents. Immigration, his strongest issue by far, now under 50%. And look at that, 37% among independents. Again, that's just absolutely miserable. Trump's job rating drops. Key policies draw majority disapproval as he nears 100 days. So this is yet another poll. So you can see these are not like outliers. Now you're seeing a pattern among all of these polls. This is the Pew poll. Overall approval rating, just 40%. Tariffs, 39%. Cuts to federal departments and agencies, just 44%. Notice not seeing much of Elon around the White House anymore.
Nope.
And this is why. Doge underwater. Most Americans say the Trump administration would need to stop an action if a federal court says it's illegal. So this gets into the handling of the Abrego Garcia case being the highest profile example of what we're talking about. But if you look, when asked the question, would he have to follow a court's ruling, 78% say he would have to follow a court's ruling. 19% say he does not have to follow the court's ruling. But when you escalate to the Supreme Court, half the people who say he has the right to defy a lower court say, well, no, he doesn't have the right to defy the Supreme Court. 88-9 say he has to abide by the ruling of the Supreme Court. That is about as convincing a majority as you'll ever get on any issue in America these days. It's very rare you get 80% of people to agree on anything nowadays. And here we have, more specifically, when you dig into this, so this is the New York Times Siena poll, which did their own poll. This is yet another one. So again, we're not just picking one thing and talking about it because that could be an outlier. We're taking all of these polls into consideration here. Trade, 42. Foreign conflicts, 40. Russia, Ukraine, 35. And look at that. Look at that rating about Kilmar Abrego Garcia. 31% approve of his handling of that case. 52 disapprove, the remaining being unsure. Remember when Scott Jennings went on CNN and said, this is another 80-20 issue where the Democrats are going to El Salvador and vouching for an MS-13 gang member, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, they're saying, keep doing that, keep doing that, keep going, keep going. The more you raise this issue, the better for us. Well, no. 31% approve of how he's handled this case. That's very, very encouraging to see, I must say. So this is how bad they have screwed this up. This is how they have tanked the goodwill that they had coming into office. On the signature issue of immigration, look at how they have squandered this. 38% favor deporting all immigrants living in the U.S. illegally, while 40% oppose. If you were to take this poll 3 weeks ago, you'd have 60% favorability for deporting all illegal immigrants. I mean, that was consistent across the board, mid-50s, some even in the low 60s. Now, what you've had is not so much an increase in people who say, well, no, you should let them stay. You've seen a massive increase in people who are not so sure about this anymore. Now 20%, when you ask them that, think, well, I don't know. Why don't they know? They don't know because in theory it sounds reasonable enough. If you're here illegally, you got to go, right? It's kind of basic. But they've seen how the administration has implemented these deportations in such bad faith and with such ill will and with such malice that, you know what? Even on this issue, his signature issue, now fewer than 40% of the people think, yes, deport everyone who's here illegally. That really tells the story of these 100 days, how they took the goodwill that the country handed them in a mandate of sorts. Not a historic mandate, but sure, I would grant you he had a mandate, especially on this issue where his numbers were very, very strong. I mean, he had well over 50% approval on immigration, and he turned it into this. Look at the line below that. Revoking foreign students' visas over their participation in pro-Palestinian activism, just 28%. Just 28% favor getting student protesters out of the country for wrong think about Israel. So This and other headlines like it, which we'll show you, may explain why and how they've squandered all of this goodwill about immigration. Judge says 2-year-old U.S. citizen appears to have been deported with no meaningful process. Trump has now deported multiple U.S. citizen children with cancer. Rolling Stone reports among the children deported with their mothers, says the ACLU, are 3 U.S. citizens aged 2, 4, and 7. One of the children is a 4-year-old suffering from a rare form of metastatic cancer and was deported out of the country without medication or consultation with their treating physicians, despite ICE being notified in advance of the child's medical needs. The civil rights organization says that the mother of the 2-year-old is pregnant and was deported without ensuring any continuity of prenatal care or proper medical care. This is at least the second time the Trump administration has deported a child suffering from cancer. Last month, a U.S. citizen and 10-year-old child with brain cancer was deported from Texas to Mexico with her undocumented parents. Here's the headline on that. U.S. citizen child recovering from brain cancer removed to Mexico with undocumented parents. And here's another headline talking about what Rolling Stone magazine. 3 U.S. citizens aged 2, 4, and 7 swiftly deported from Louisiana. And New York Times Siena poll overall, 54-42 Americans disapprove of job that Donald Trump is doing. Now, how is Fox News coping with this? Well, here's the House Democrat over there giving some more numbers to the panel, and we'll see how the conservatives react. So pay attention to their reaction, but also she will get into some more numbers that we didn't show you in the images here.
Bear had a beautiful graphic. I might frame it on my wall that had the approval ratings for the last 6 presidents for the first 100 days. Donald Trump is now the lowest. He beat himself. So he was at 45% in the first 100 days of Trump 1.0, and now he's at 44%. His economic ratings have gone down by 20%. The American public don't trust him on cost of living, inflation, all the things he was hired to do. They know the tariffs are a tax on them. The CEOs of Walmart and Target and Home Depot have to go into his office and beg him to stop so that the shelves won't be empty. There are containers coming from China that can't get here because of these tariffs, 145%. Or maybe it's 50%.
What does this have to do with the Maryland dad?
Right. It has to do with what Trump is doing. And there are all of these GOP-appointed judges that are ruling against him, saying a path of perfect lawlessness, brazen example of retaliation.
Put it this way, you're just actually undoing your whole point, Jessica.
No, I'm not.
Because they are focusing on this guy who basically every day we find out that I don't know how he could be underwater. He might be under 50%, but he's not underwater.
He's well underwater, and he's well underwater on the Kilmar-Abrego Garcia question. Well underwater, 31%.
On immigration.
Fine. Reuters, YouGov, Quinnipiac, just honestly,
winning
it's
on
fine.
deportation. You admitted that.
But
Right.
2-1 that this guy should be returned. Listen,
Keep
you're
defending
right.
a gangbanger all you want.
They're still saying that. They're still going with that. She just cited the data for you, 2-1, saying he should be returned. I don't know if she gets into it in this clip or not. His approval rating with Hispanics now at 27%. About 30, I forget what the exact number is, between 35 and 40% of Hispanics, not immigrants, not undocumented immigrants, Hispanics, fear that his immigration policy is going to negatively affect them. Why? Because you can get rounded up for anything if you're Hispanic and you got the wrong tattoo. That's why. That's why.
Yeah.
That's how badly they have botched this.
They should emphasize
the
economy. That's what you're.
Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, they squandered an opportunity to build a generational political advantage.
Right.
Like, really, if they had built on that momentum, because, the conventional wisdom, and it was kind of proven in this election, you only have to peel away a few points of black votes and Hispanic votes from Democrats to crush them in a landslide.
Right.
If you had just built on that momentum, how would they have ever won an election, without a similar zeitgeist change to this?
Right.
And they just lit it on fire in 100 days.
Yep.
It's amazing.
I understand that you want me to try to unravel everything that I said. The economy is what drives people to the polls. He now only has a 27% rating with Hispanic voters.
Oh, yeah, she did say
because
that,
he's not focused on the economy and their costs haven't gone down.
So are you saying he's going to have a hard time being reelected in 2028?
Right.
Well, he's wearing, Eric Trump is wearing a hat that says Trump 2028
this is very
today,
similar
so.
when Ronald Reagan made titanic changes in the economy. Initially, people panicked.
Donald Trump,
you did. But he's actually doing just as titanic
people who
moves.
can afford to
At
sit
least
there and
he's
say,
leading the country. Your guy
into the gutter.
wasn't even present.
We'll see.
Yeah, that's a sick burn. At least he's leading the country. Your guy isn't even present. It's a sad scene over there. So what really happens, what really explains this, as we got into a little bit in the last segment, it's the economy first. People will put up with a lot if they feel like they're in good hands economically. They'll put up with very little if they don't. So the first real strike against them was Doge. The people soured on Doge very quickly once they figured out what it was about. They repudiated Elon by 10 points in that Wisconsin race. Since then, you've heard pretty much nothing out of him. They backseated him. Of course, they screamed it was fake news when they said he was taking a back seat. Oh, no, that's bullshit. Fake news. Meanwhile, we haven't heard from him ever since. So obviously it was not fake news. The tariffs, obviously huge. A third of Republicans are against this trade war. That's massive because tariffs and inflation go hand in hand and cost of living is king. And these deportations. You see now that they understand there's no payoff for them economically. Now they're looking at this. Wait a minute. So we're deporting children with cancer and we're not getting any payoff for it? Now, there are a lot of people in this country who, would tolerate such a horrible policy if they could balance it out with a nice payday for them. Maybe not as many, as to constitute a majority. But if you're starving them out economically, and you're just doing cruelty for cruelty's sake, deporting kids recovering from brain cancer without ensuring any continuity of care, deporting pregnant mothers without ensuring any continuity of care, like that level of malice really hits people hard, especially when they are economically hurting, because then they can't really put it out of their mind as easily. And call me a cynic for saying that. But it's true. People put up with a lot in good economic times, and they put up with very little in bad economic times. And so these are bad economic times with an authoritarian fascist regime just trampling the Constitution. That's why not only are they underwater on the economy, but if you look at those more philosophical questions, horrible numbers there as well. So, as I said in the last piece, this has been probably the most disastrous first 100 days of any presidency, certainly in my lifetime. And there have been some horrible presidents in my lifetime, but even Biden had a honeymoon period. Biden was at 52% at this time. George W. Bush was over 60% at this time. Obama was over 60% at this time. They have completely run their reputation into the ground very, very quickly.
Well, because they had no meaningful or realistic plan to actually help the American people. This is the logical endpoint of trickle-down economics. It's trickle-down economics being applied to a country where the wealth has pretty much been extracted away from the working class and the working poor. But you don't want to philosophically, coming out of this Reaganomics idea, this almost free market fundamentalism, you just can't solve these things with government. Quite the opposite, as we'll see in our next segment. They want to take away disaster relief. They want to take away everything that government does for people, but you're promising them jobs. You have to deliver them something, right?
Right.
So you have to convince yourself that this cockamamie scheme of tariff walls are going to bring back manufacturing, and that's going to do what a New Deal would do for people while not having to tax the rich, which is basically your entire fucking cabinet, And you're not going to have to invest in infrastructure. How's that going to happen? That's an interesting question too. Okay, suppose these factories came here. What are you going to do about our crumbling bridges, our crumbling roads, our crumbling railroads? Like, what are you going to do about the fact that to have a business environment that serious industries really want to function in, you have to have functioning infrastructure. That requires government. How are you going to get other people to pay for that? This is the logical endpoint of a failed economic theory. It's not like it just failed. It failed when Reagan was still president. But they're so committed to it because once they abandon this narrative that the free market can take care of it, what do they have? What do they have?
Right.
I mean, at that point, they have absolutely no basis to claim to have a plan to make people's lives better.
Exactly. I saw someone in the chat, and this has been a common retort. You know, Tom Homan said this too. Well, would you rather us separate the family and send the mother back without the child? No, what I would rather you do is if someone is here undocumented and not causing a problem, let's say they're selling empanadas outside the gas station, as was the case in a story that we covered long ago. If they're here and, they're just doing what they can to get by and their 4-year-old has fucking cancer, I think you should let them stay. Yeah, radical that I am. I think you should let them stay until the kid is done with cancer treatment. I think if you're against that, you're a bad person. That's what I think. Mm-hmm. And I think a country that is against that is a bad country that deserves to suffer economically in a major way. But luckily, hold on a second, because this is important because I get in trouble for talking like this. Luckily, most people in America don't believe that, which is why his ratings are underwater on this issue now.
Yeah, I think most people, when they see these Michael Bay celebrations of people having their heads shaved in a foreign country who were sent there with no due process, most normal people don't feel great about that.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Now there are a lot of sick fucks, and that's Trump's core.
Right, that's the base.
Aides. Those are the ones who are going to go down with.
They shouldn't be here. Okay.
Okay.
4-year-old with cancer shouldn't be here. Fuck them. Send them back.
I'm loving this. So much winning. Much winning. I mean, these are you got to feel sorry for them. You have to feel pretty disconnected from community, from society. You've got to be a very hopeless person to take joy in that kind of cruelty.
Right.
But to take part in your cynicism and to reinforce this point again, yeah, man, if they the smartest thing they could have done, if they had come in and just basically forced a new deal through Congress to rebuild roads, rebuild infrastructure. This is traditionally the kind of thing fascists will do, which is why very often these right-wingers will accuse them of being socialist, even though they tend to lock up socialists and communists when they're in power. But they do, as a rule, at least the classic flavor of fascist. They understood they had to make the trains run on time. They had to create jobs. So they would tend to do these big infrastructure projects that would put people to work. You're not doing any of that. You're just going to throw up tariffs that are going to skyrocket inflation and tell people the free market will solve it, and then you're going to deport 4-year-olds with cancer.
Right.
Yeah, most people are not going to be down with that. What's in it?
You have to be a complete
psycho.
You have to be a complete lunatic to say, yeah, no, this sounds great. That sounds like a place I want to live. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you have to be just a complete psycho. Just a complete lunatic.
Trump's going to get around to helping me any day now.
Exactly.
Any day.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's not funny, but it is. It's comical. All right. Fat, not so fat. Thanks for the $4.99. How are the Trump influencers going to spin empty shelves we are about to experience from the tariffs? Yeah, that'll be interesting to see.
There's the calm before the storm. Like everything's still pretty much the same because these things have not filtered down into the economy yet.
Right. Exactly. The Amazing Blumpkin, thanks for the $10. Stephen Miller, what? You can't say piece of it on your show? Thanks to the Amazing Blumpkin. P.S. Apparently you cannot. Let's see here. GZ, thanks for the $4.99. My ex is from Buffalo. We always visited in winter when they got lake effect snow. 7 feet over 3 days. It was an experience. Great show, fellas. Thank you, GZ. Yeah, well, they get
Yeah,
snow
I
up there.
mean, it's cold. It's cold here now. I don't know what it's like downstate. Like
Yeah.
tomorrow's going to be nice, and then it drops back down into the 40s.
I says peace is possible if we're lucky. Thanks, Brad Gilbert. Putin wants the Israel deal without money laundering. Thank you, Brad Gilbert. Landrew for $100. Thank you, Landrew. Let's get
All
a
right,
digital
I'll get
cowbell
it.
for our friend Landrew. Landrew says, is Tesla the new GameStop? 10 minutes before the disastrous earnings release, Mush leaving the White House at Wall Street Casino, free Palestine. Thank you.
I keep saying it's the new Atari.
Yeah, there you go. It's the new Atari. That's right. Did we give Landrew his other sound drop?
Oh no.
Yeah, we
Whoops,
gotta give him
sorry about that, Landrew.
The signature sound drop for Landrew. Thank you very much, Landrew. Appreciate that very, very much.
Landrew is dead.
All right. EO Shush says China's attacks on Trump and U.S. workers are getting wild. I went out to Chinese and my fortune cookie said, you're fat and stupid like your president. Like that. And like JD Vance, you will soon learn who are the peasants. Like they should make fortune cookies like that. You're fat and stupid like your president. That's good. It's Vito P. I swear I could literally see Besson's nose start growing. Cancer sucks. You guys rock. Thank you, Vito.
Thank you, man.
What do we all call opposite of the buck stops here? Come on, Donald. Thank you. Nina Kant says basically Trump never learns a lesson by acknowledging a mistake and learning from it. He's too much of a blank to ever admit a mistake. Thank you for that. Appreciate that, Nina. All right, let's move right on along. Arkansas is up next.
So much winning. So much winning. This was Sarah Huckabee Sanders giving, according to The Storm Has Arrived, Big MAGA account, one of the greatest speeches I've heard in a long time. So let's hear a little bit of what she said at the RNC convention.
Donald Trump was the very first president in my lifetime to take a hard line against China, and I'm proud to be the first and only governor in the country to kick communist China off our farmland and out of my state.
Well, we got a lot of dissidents in Arkansas.
No longer are they going to be rounding up the capitalist class and executing them behind the barn.
We have a lot of Arkansas dissidents. I don't know. She may have missed a few. We got a lot of fans in Arkansas. She missed Tusker. That's for sure.
Yeah. Well, no, she told us that story. She hid out in a ditch during that.
During
A
the
lifetime
Huckabee
to take
Sanders
a
raids of
hard line
2024.
against China, and I'm proud to be the first and only governor in the country to kick communist China off our farmland and out of my state.
I don't know what it means, but it sounded.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sorry. Like I mean, these people are just so fucking dumb. like how do you I can't. I mean, I'm trying to be polite about it, But yeah, how can you?
Them with those caps with the red stars on them, I was getting sick of it.
Bill Clinton let all them commies in Arkansas.
He let all those commies in. They bought all the farmland. First, we had the queers ruining the soil, and then we got the commies.
All the diners ever serve is potato soup.
Okay.
Five-minute ovation
President
for getting the
Trump is a
communists out of
leader.
Arkansas.
And he's the leader our country needs. And if ever there was a doubt, earlier this week, we saw just how tough, resilient, courageous, and daring this man is, and we can't get him back in the White House fast enough.
All right. Well, high praise for her old boss there, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, of course, the current governor of Arkansas. Now, Arkansas had 14 storms in 48 hours. So let's take a look at some of that storm damage. Yeah, it looks pretty rough, man. Looks pretty rough. You know what these folks need? They probably need some federal money.
Yeah, it
Probably
looks like a
need
job
some
for
some of
FEMA.
their FEMA help. Yeah, look at that, man.
You know what they could use also? Maybe they could use some communists to rebuild.
They could
You
use
know?
because
Communists
they
are good in a factory. They're good at manufacturing.
well, and they're also good about collective action to help the community.
Exactly. They shouldn't have
Um,
kicked the communists out.
They should see that's karma. That's
Yeah.
karma right there. So hey, wow, this was really must have been a shocker to her. Arkansas Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders and the state's entire GOP congressional delegation are urging President Trump to reconsider after FEMA denied the state's request for federal disaster relief following a series of deadly storms last month. Wow. Wow. I bet she didn't see that coming when she was talking about how fast we needed to get him into the White House. 14 tornadoes struck Arkansas over 2 days, killing 3 people, leaving 32 injured, damaged or destroyed 500 homes, cars, and businesses, leaving behind over 8.8 million of storm damage. A red state begged Trump for help. He said, fuck no. Now they're screwed. Now they're screwed. How much did Arkansas go for Trump by? I guess that doesn't really matter. 64.2%. You know, I never, based on his history, would have read Donald Trump as a guy who just throws people under the bus, who just uses them, chews them up, and spits them out again. Didn't it all seem like that kind of guy going in? I just can't believe that he's treating his own voters that way. But there you go. You learn something new every day. So 64.2% of Arkansans voted for our current commander-in-chief. But he doesn't want to give them any FEMA aid after getting 14 storms in 2 days. And a very poor state, too. Not the kind of state that can really afford to make up that money. One of their senators here, John Boozman, compounding natural disasters in multiple communities last month will make recovery more difficult for the state and local governments in Arkansas. Our congressional delegation supports Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders' request for reconsideration of a major disaster declaration. Now, you might notice, so the whole delegation signed this, and they're all Republicans, I believe. Now, some of them have been rather outspoken about not giving aid to other localities in similar straits. You might see Tom Cotton's name there. Tom Cotton begs Trump for disaster relief after opposing it for Democratic states. 67 Republicans voted no to assisting people who were left powerless or homeless by Hurricane Sandy. They've got a full list, and guess who's on the list? Tom Cotton. Tom Cotton is one of the Republicans who voted not to give disaster relief to Hurricane Sandy because, you know, it was in a blue state. So those people don't get, but he wants it now. Boy, it's funny how these people want their disaster relief when they need it. Sarah Huckabee Sanders is another one. As long as I am your governor, the meddling hand of big government creeping down from Washington, D.C., we stopped cold at the Mississippi River. Well, turns out that, you see, the federal government, it's not that there isn't inefficiency or corruption, but the core idea is that it's there to help you with things that are too big for a locality or a state to handle on their own. You see, that's having a society, not just a bunch of people stabbing each other for for a Twinkie or whatever your idea, your libertarian vision of the ideal society is. So now, Trump actually, unlike a lot of people in his party, like Cotton, like Huckabee Sanders, he was a big supporter of disaster relief before he got elected. He talked quite a lot about it when he was on the campaign trail. particularly talked a lot about how horribly Biden and Harris treated the people in North Carolina. Nobody had ever seen anything like it, according to Trump.
Hurricane has been a bad one. Kamala Harris has left them stranded. This is the worst response to a storm or a catastrophe or a hurricane that we've ever seen, ever. Probably worse than Katrina, and that's hard to beat, right? Worse than Katrina. They didn't do too good a job either, but this is worse. And she sends their money to foreign nations. He and she, they send hundreds of billions of dollars. They send hundreds of billions of dollars to foreign nations. And you know what they're giving our people? $750. 700. Here, Tyson. This is the worst response, I think. Troy, what do you think? The worst? Never saw.
Didn't we just send another $8 billion to Israel? Did we just send another $8 billion to Israel? So they could have taken that money and given it to Arkansas. Could have given it to Arkansas or North Carolina. So Trump, right after he got elected, he went down to North Carolina and he fulfilled his campaign promise not to forget these people, at least if you interpret that campaign promise as meaning letting them step up to a microphone and talk about how badly they've been treated. But he didn't actually plan on doing anything to help them beyond that. Trump just denied North Carolina's request for FEMA relief from Hurricane Helene, calling it unwarranted. And this is another state that went big for Trump. Now, this seems like, as is increasingly typical of this administration's way of governing, even without the legal framework to do things, they're just acting on their policies regardless. So it looks like they're enacting policies that they haven't actually put into law and applying it to these states, regardless of whether these are his own voters or not. Trump officials discuss making it much harder to qualify for federal disaster assistance starting this hurricane season. Trump emergency management officials are discussing reforms that would make it much harder for communities to qualify for federal disaster assistance, honoring President Donald Trump's executive order to shift more responsibility for disaster response and recovery to states rather than the federal government. A memo from acting FEMA Administrator Cameron Hamilton, a Trump appointee, sounds like an evil frat boy from a college movie, obtained by CNN, outlines a long list of recommendations for Trump to follow that could drastically reduce the number of emergency declarations the president approves and the amount of federal assistance doled out to cities and states hit by natural disasters. Such a change ahead of what are typically the worst months for natural disasters across the U.S. could pose significant problems for states that are unprepared to foot the bill and for the millions of Americans impacted by disasters every year. Most notably, the memo sent to an official with the White House Office of Management and Budget proposes dramatically raising the threshold for states to qualify for public assistance, effectively quadrupling the amount of damage a community must suffer in order to receive federal aid. The proposal also recommends reducing the share of recovery costs the federal government will pay, limiting the types of facilities eligible for assistance, and denying all major disaster declarations for snowstorms. Rural communities, especially in large states, could struggle most to fill the gaps. Those areas often suffer severe but concentrated damage and may not qualify for public assistance under a much higher threshold. So just to flesh that out a little bit, the way they calculate it is how much the damage costs per capita across the state. So if you've got very heavy damage in 4 towns, like you have in Arkansas, and you have to divide that damage by the number of people in the whole state, there's a very good chance you're not going to qualify for those funds. It's not like a place like LA or New York City where 4 blocks get destroyed. It's going to be an enormous amount of money. Even with the larger population, everything has so much more value. If you destroy these towns, how much are these houses worth? How much are these businesses worth? That's the world that these people live in, but it means a lot to them. But in economic terms, that's probably not going to work out very well, specifically for Trump's voters. That's what's crazy about this. This is why I keep saying, I can't imagine a foreign enemy doing a better job destroying the country than this administration is doing. Who wants this? Who wants this? Like, it sounds very good, like get the communists off the farmland that don't exist. It sounds very good, you know. Oh, yeah, that FEMA, that goddamn FEMA. Well, what are they replacing it with? Like, you want to say you want to make FEMA better? They don't want to make FEMA better. They want to get rid of it. They want to just get rid of FEMA. Now it's on the states. So who's that most going to affect? The poorest, most rural states. In other words, Trump's base. He doesn't give a shit even about his most ardent supporters. And that's where we keep saying, talk to me by the end of the year, man. You're going to have just, you know, the Michigan militia is still going to be into Trump. That's going to be about it.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah, no, I mean, I guessed he'd be at 40% by the end of the year. He's at 40% now. So I guess I was too conservative in my guess there. But yeah, look, this is just a death cult, basically, at this point. I mean, what do you call it, if not that? It's just a cult of pain. It's a cult of suffering. And, you know, MAGA is just a collective expression of suffering. You know, Chris Hedges described it that way, loosely paraphrasing, but he called it, you know, similar to, you know, a MAGA rally is, you know, a gathering for people to, you know, share in the suffering that they live through. And, you know, he's written about this a lot. I mean, most of his body of work has to do with the degradation of the American way of life. And, you know, he approaches the issue with, I think, an appropriate amount of empathy and understanding for how people became so disenfranchised and so alienated from the system that they turned to this. But now we're here. And at this point, I think it is very quickly going to be the case that only people with that pathological sort of death drive are going to be down for this, because who could be? Who could be? What healthy person looks at a 4-year-old with cancer being deported and thinks, yeah, this is where I want to live? What healthy person looks at a story like this and says, yeah, no, it's great. It's great that they're making it harder for people whose homes were ripped through by a tornado to get the help that they need? Who? Tell me who. Tell me for whom the argument that, well, this is part of that waste, fraud, and abuse that we were rooting at. I mean, now you don't even see the guy making that argument anymore because that was a loser. Like, it's amazing how quickly this all happened. How fast. I mean, the 100 days are usually the honeymoon period. This is what I mean. Like, I had a feeling it would get to this point by the end of the year. But wow. I mean, I've never seen a collapse like this.
Well, this is all just like he's doing fascism wrong.
Right, exactly,
like, you're supposed to abuse the scapegoated other, which in the case of this movement were the immigrants.
Right.
And increase their FEMA funding.
Right, exactly.
That's how you do fascism.
Right, you do.
This, you drive off the scapegoated other, and then you fuck your core supporters as hard as you're fucking the other. You know what that's going to do? That's going to make them say, well, maybe the other wasn't so bad. Look what he's doing to me.
Well, exactly. Well, yes. I mean, and that exactly explains why now only a third of people approve of this handling of the Kilmar Abrego Garcia case.
Right.
Because if they thought, yeah, we need to beat up on this guy so that we could get a bigger piece of the pie, there are some people who are cynical enough or just ignorant enough to the point where they'll block that out or they won't pay attention to it because they figure, whatever, I'm taking care. Like, there's all kinds of ways people arrive at that bargain. But without the critical piece of actually displaying a modicum of concern for your base, then, yeah, the scapegoat is no longer an effective scapegoat because they realize, wait a minute, you have just as much contempt for me as you do the immigrant. So what's in it for me? That's where you are. That's how you got there. Victor Shakopoulos says, now would you prefer the IDF soldiers to be attacked by sharks or electrocuted? It's a very smart question. I don't know about you, but I'll take electrocution every single time. The shark, I'd rather be electrocuted than eaten by a shark. That's a good throwback to an old Trump speech. Nina Camp, by the way, that was Colin Joyce, that White House dinner last year. That's right. They did. They had the guy, the very normal looking guy. I don't know, he's a Comedy Central guy, but yes, good call, Nina. Do you think there will be a woke backlash to the anti-woke backlash as Trump's approval dips? I've seen the libtards talking about dark woke recently. Yeah, no, they're going to have President Rachel Levine in 2028, and she's going to tell Arkansas, she's going to say, you want that FEMA money? You're going to have to reinstate DEI. That's it. Then we'll give you the FEMA money. Then we'll release the FEMA funds. Otherwise, nothing.
I mean, that is the only thing that makes me say they have a chance. The opposition hasn't learned a goddamn thing.
It's Vito P. The young cancer patient should stay. Trump and his mafia should go. As always, great show. Cancer sucks. You guys rock. Thank you, Vito. Appreciate that.
Thank you, man.
China thinks neoliberals are very funny people. Thank you, Artie Bloody Fart Blast. Thanks, fellas. Keep it up, says Hump678. Jake, can we hit the scroll, please? And Russ, you got to load some videos in while Jake.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing.
Cool. All right, folks. Hey, if you like what we do here, you can help us do more of it by becoming a member. You can do so by going to patreon.com/DoDissidents, DoDissidents.substack.com, or DoDissidents.locals.com. But Jake did a great thing and put the links up. He made links for us. So dealer's choice. Those 3 hyperlinks go to our 3 member platforms, DoDissidents.com/Patreon, /Substack, or /Locals. If you're watching on Rumble, you can join our locals by clicking the bright red join button underneath the screen. Everybody else can click any one of those links, or you can go to DoDissidents.locals.com. Perks of membership include, of course, your name up in lights here on the patron scroll. You also get call-in access to our post-show Q&As every Sunday night, including tonight, because it is Sunday. We are going to Rumble for the final segments of the show as well as for the Q&A. You also get Film Club live streams, content and call-in live streams. We'll be doing a content and call-in live stream on Wednesday of this week. So if you join up, you get a special members-only show this week where we do about an hour's worth of content and then take about an hour's worth of your calls. You also get an email the day after every stream with a link to watch an ad-free replay of the stream. So in case you miss a show and you don't want to watch the replay with all the ads on YouTube or Rumble, if you join for just $5 a month, the day after every stream, we send you a replay video, which is ad-free. And that especially comes in handy on a night like tonight where the show is split into 2 different places because we're going to have most of the show on YouTube, but then the full show on Rumble. So rather than have to navigate that, you just, for $5 a month, every time we do a show, the day after, you get the ad-free replay. People are loving that feature. So we make it worth your while as best we can, folks, and your support is what keeps this show afloat. We absolutely could not do it without you. And we do want to start hiring people for more on-the-ground reporting and stuff like that. We hope to make that a big component of the show, but we need members to do that because you need a steady stream of revenue so you can pay people when you need them. So DoDissidents.locals.com is where you go to sign up. You can sign up for $5 a month or $50 for the entire year, which gets you 2 free months. So thank you, as always, for your support. Okay, let's see. We got some more Rumble rants. We'll get to Shaney of Old Stone says, sweet, good work on the democracy, America. Thank you. Rebuild infrastructure. Commies, says Shaney. Amadeus says China has dumped the dollar, according to some. All right, well, we'll have more on that this week, of course. Okay, folks, we are moving right along here. This story is a couple days old, but it made huge waves when it hit. So judge's arrest is latest front in Trump's battle with the courts. Officers handcuffed Milwaukee Judge Hannah Dugan in public. Attorney General Pam Bondi bragged about going after judges who think they're above the law. The escalating fight between President Donald Trump and the judiciary took a new form Friday. After weeks of mounting questions about whether Trump was defying court orders, the administration arrested a Wisconsin judge and accused her of helping a Mexican immigrant evade arrest by federal agents. Officers handcuffed Milwaukee County Judge Hannah Dugan in public. Attorney General Pam Bondi bragged on the Fox News show America Reports about the administration's willingness to go after judges who think they're above the law. FBI Director Kash Patel began the day by announcing Dugan's arrest on social media and ended it by posting a photo of agents leading her away. So here is Pam Bondi, very, very proud of the work that the FBI did here.
Our judiciary is beyond me.
Yeah, so when the American public hears this and they think these were once upstanding people in their communities and their professions, and they put it all on the line for this, I mean, have you dug into their motive? Like, what inspired them to carry out these acts and harbor criminals?
It's a real hardball
They're
question
deranged
there.
is all I can think of. I cannot believe, I think some of these judges think they are beyond and above the law, and they are not. And we're sending a very strong message today. If you are harboring a fugitive, we don't care who you are. If you are helping hide one, if you are giving a TDA member guns, anyone who is illegally in this country, we will come after you and we will prosecute you. We will find you.
If I could just find you. I tweeted from my personal account. I said, does the Trump administration do anything besides threaten to deport and jail people? Like, it seems like this is all they do.
Not really.
Every time you look up on Twitter, there's one of these guys, but we will find you. That's their slogan. That should have been their slogan.
Yep.
Not make America great again. Trump 2024. We will find you.
With the big brother eyes on a poster.
With the big brother eyes. Yeah, exactly. They're always threatening to find you. We're going to come find you. That makes me feel really free. Really free. So Kash Patel posted this, then deleted it, and then posted it again. I don't know what that was about. But just now, the FBI arrested Judge Hannah Dugan out of Milwaukee, Wisconsin on charges of obstruction after evidence of Judge Dugan obstructing an immigration arrest operation last week. We believe Judge Dugan intentionally misdirected federal agents away from the subject to be arrested in her courthouse, Eduardo Flores Ruiz, allowing the subject, an illegal alien, to evade arrest. Thankfully, our agents chased down the perp on foot, and he's been in custody since. But the judge's obstruction created increased danger to the public. We will have more to share soon. Excellent work. Epstein files on their way. It's a shame we didn't get them out sooner because a certain thing happened that we would have liked to maybe avoid by getting ahead of that. But hey, we had more other priorities. We'll get to it at some point, though, I'm sure.
And he's going to round up all those corrupt deep state actors
and
any
the
day
deep
now.
state actors. That's right. That's
Any
right,
day.
them too. Any day. Yes, they're working on it. Trump has been quick to denounce judges who rule against him, including calling for the impeachment of a federal judge who ordered the administration not to use a wartime authority to deport alleged members of a Venezuelan gang. The president's demand drew a rebuke from Chief Justice John Roberts. Now, to be clear, this arrest was not over a ruling, as we'll get to in a moment. Prosecutors charged Dugan with obstructing a proceeding before a federal agency and concealing an individual to prevent his arrest. According to the criminal complaint, the judge became visibly upset this month when she learned federal agents were waiting outside her courtroom to arrest Eduardo Flores Ruiz, 30, who was set to appear before her on misdemeanor state battery charges. Now, before we go on, because this is the claim that she's basically obstructing, they were there to arrest this guy, and she basically slipped him out the back door, or tried to anyway, which is why they pinched her. Now, what I will add here is that generally it is, I don't want to say customary, but that's a very sort of polite way of saying it. Courthouses are generally considered off limits from like raids by law enforcement because the reason behind that is fairly obvious. If you start arresting people at courthouses and raiding courthouses to arrest people, it makes it much less likely that people will show up to their court appointments. And this is now the second time this has happened. The Palestinian activist, I forget his name, not Mahmoud Khalil, the other guy from Colombia, he was arrested at an immigration meeting. So those sorts of government office buildings and courthouses are generally off limits because there's a societal interest in not having those forums be venues for raids and arrests, because that'll create a chilling effect where now the people who you want in the system going for their immigration hearings and appointments will not go. They're not going to show up if they see that they're being raided left and right. And it was unclear, based on what reporting there is now, whether they had a warrant. So there's still a lot unknown about what exactly happened here. Dugan sent the agents down the hall to the office of the court's chief judge, the complaint says. While they were away, she postponed Flores Ruiz's hearing and escorted him and his lawyer through a jury exit that leads to a private area of the courthouse. That area leads to the public hallway where federal agents were stationed, and the agent soon saw him in the hallway. One agent rode with Flores Ruiz in an elevator to the ground floor and, after meeting up with other agents outside, chased Flores Ruiz and arrested him, according to the complaint. Rather than allow Dugan to surrender to authorities, an option routinely offered to defendants who are not deemed to be flight risks or a danger to arresting agents, federal authorities arrested her at the courthouse, well, because that was what the photo op was about, as we'll see in a moment. Craig Mastantuono, one of Dugan's lawyers, he should be the next pope, Pope Mastantuono, one of Dugan's lawyers, contrasted that approach with Trump's experience during each of his indictments when he was allowed to surrender to authorities at an agreed-upon time. It's night versus day, Mastantuono said. It's normal versus abnormal. On Friday evening, Patel posted a photo of Dugan, hands cuffed behind her back, being escorted from the building. No one is above the law, Patel wrote. So this is what it was all about. They wanted
Except
to go.
The boss.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. I mean, they wanted Pam Bondi to be able to go on TV and brag about this. They wanted the photo op of the perp walk. This was clearly the purpose of this. Now, Glenn Greenwald tweets out, one of the biggest favors Dems always do for Trump is using the most extreme and alarmist rhetoric, leading to the boy who cried wolf syndrome. There are huge civil liberties concerns, which Glenn has obviously voiced many, many times over and over again. Arresting a judge for a ruling would be massive. Today isn't that. So he points out that this wasn't retaliation for a ruling against Trump. Here's a little piece of sound he attached to the tweet.
Let's strip the politics out of it. This is a crime. If they can prove what happened here, it is a crime. This judge, let's strip the Trump of it all out. Let's strip the immigration of it all out. Let's say law enforcement shows up at a building with an arrest warrant. They're looking for person A. Person B then says, hey, there's a secret escape door out back. I'm going to show you the way, and then ushers that person out the back door. That is textbook obstruction.
He continues, I'm not even saying I think the arrest is justified, but judges get arrested all the time at every level for breaking the law, bribes, extortion, election corruption, etc. If you want to object to this, fine, but stop pretending the arrest was in response to an adverse ruling. Now, a chatbot here pushes back. The real issue isn't rhetorical extremes, it's the systemic weaponization of legal processes to silence dissent. When courts become political battlegrounds, trust in justice erodes. The Department of Defense's own audit failures show how bureaucratic rot spreads when institutions prioritize power over accountability. Judges shouldn't fear arrest for rulings, but neither should they operate above scrutiny. The problem isn't crying wolf, it's a system where both sides exploit legal frameworks to punish opponents while avoiding real reform. Until we slash the administrative state stranglehold, these cycles of overreach will keep repeating. Now, I told you Glenn has been kind of in a sassy mood lately, it seems, and nothing says sass like clapping back at a chatbot. He replies, you're such a preachy bot, even in the instances when I agree with you. So, yeah, look, I mean, my take on this is a bit nuanced, which means it's going to piss off 90% of people. Obviously, this is not a response to a ruling that didn't go Trump's way. So I think even the Washington Post doesn't come out and say that, but they kind of hints that that's kind of what it's about because they put that paragraph in. That's why I included it in the piece. However, I do have to say the boy who cried wolf syndrome kind of goes both ways. Like, and what I mean by that is, like, yes, we know the libs have cried wolf about Trump a million times. In the first term, that's pretty much all they did. However, the reason I say it goes both ways is when the administration acts with such brazen disregard for separation of powers and with such obvious contempt for everyone who tries to check their power, and then they cuff a judge yeah, that's going to provoke alarmist reactions because the administration has kind of done their version of crying wolf, which is that they've been so extreme every step in the way that now they arrest the judge in broad daylight on camera and immediately have Kash Patel tweet about it and post photos of it and immediately send Pam Bondi onto Fox News to brag about it. That is going to alarm people because the way you've been acting this whole time has been very alarming, legitimately alarming.
Yeah.
So you can't really blame people for getting a little scared about this, even if the specifics aren't as damning as some in the liberal media may say they are. If she tried to help the guy get away and they can prove that that's obstruction, they may have a case. I listened to an interview with a defense lawyer in Wisconsin who knows the judge well, who said, yeah, that was probably, it could have been a panicked reaction. She probably didn't know if they had a warrant or not. She doesn't like the fact that they raided her courthouse for reasons I explained earlier. When you raid courthouses, you create a chilling effect at the courthouse where now people aren't showing up to trial because they're afraid that they're going to get pinched by the feds or ICE or whatever. So she may have had reason to do what she did. It was probably a panicked move that she should not have made. Obviously now she's got to be feeling quite scared. They're talking about giving her 6 years in prison, which is, of course, I think totally insane. But now you're on the wrong side of the government. It's Washington that's bringing these charges. It's Washington that's making a spectacle of this case. And look, their motto is, you heard Pam Bondi say it, we will find you. They're obsessed. They're obsessed with deporting people and throwing people in jail. And now they have her in their crosshairs. And so specifics of the case may not be as dire as some in lib world are making it out to be. But I'm sorry, man. Like, you've given people every reason to be alarmed when this happens. And the fact that you're making such a show of it, it says that you want to do it even more. And what did we say? Same thing with the immigrants. Oh, this is only going to be for the criminal immigrants. Only the criminal immigrants are going to end up in El Salvador. Well, now they're doing the same thing here. We're starting with a judge who may have obstructed, who may have broken the law, and they're saying, we're going to throw the book at her. And I'm sure there are people saying, well, this is not a big deal. I'm sure they're not going to go any further than that. Well, look to a previous example not too long ago to see that they did go further than that. And so the take is a little nuanced here. I'm not saying this judge did nothing wrong. She probably panicked and did something she probably shouldn't have done. But this is an escalatory move. There's no doubt about that. In an administration that has proven its willingness to escalate as far as they can get away with at every turn.
Yeah, this is an administration of freaks and criminals who have no response to the problems of the country other than to hit everything with a hammer and see where the pieces fall.
Right.
You lay it out. Well, traditionally, you don't do this because people won't show up to courts. That's something you got to be a thoughtful person to play out before you take an action. Those are not these people.
Exactly.
They don't give a shit. They don't think through the consequences to institutions of their actions. They really don't care. And part of that is they have nothing to offer other than brute force.
Right.
This is all just to entertain their base, to tell their base that they're doing, look, we locked up a judge. And it's also to scare other judges.
Right.
And this is really, as we keep saying, it's all of the horrors you associate with fascism without a plan beyond that.
Right.
Just lock people up, scare people, threaten people, and that's it. And oh, by the way, we're going to throw up tariffs, and don't worry, you're going to be knee deep in factories before you know it, and it's all going to be great, and we're not going to have to lift a penny. And you know what? Most importantly, we're going to be able to give our criminal friends their tax cuts.
Exactly. Now think about this. Because if they create a chilling effect at courthouses by raiding courthouses, that's going to make it harder for them to deport people.
What
not
if
easier.
is going to go to a courthouse now?
Well, this is what I mean.
Immigration appointment.
And that makes it harder to deport more people, not easier, because now people disappear. Because now they're not checking in with judges. They're not going to their appointments anymore. It's almost like, as I've said, it's not really about deportations. It's really not about even immigration. It's about creating a police state. They want to create a police state where they scare people into compliance. The immigrants are just the scapegoat they need to do that. This is a perfect example of that plan in action. If you really want to deport as many illegal immigrants as possible, you wouldn't touch a courthouse. You wouldn't touch a courthouse because you want people to be showing up to their appointments so you can keep track of them if they're here illegally. You don't want them going underground and disappearing, going off the radar. Then it's hard to catch them. So it's completely counterproductive. They don't care. They don't care. They don't even care about deportations. They care about creating a police state. And you can't create a police state without a scapegoat because normal people don't want to live in a police state. They will sign up for a police state if they feel they have to in order to be protected against the scapegoat group. In the Bush years, it was Muslim terrorists. In the Biden years, it was January 6thers, white nationalists are going to kidnap the governor. And now it's the illegal immigrant gang member. And that is what they are using to create, yes, an authoritarian police state, a surveillance state. This is not going to lead to more deportation. If you scare people you scare people out of going to their appointments, how are you going to deport massive amounts of people? Are you going to go find them in their houses? I mean, how are you going to keep track of if they're not consistently checking in with the system? How do you know where they are? What if they leave? What if they skip town?
Well, they're going to need a police state when all the consequences of their actions really come home to roost. You have this complete collapse in tourism, which, hey, man, that's not trivial. That affects airlines. That affects car rentals. That affects restaurants. That affects hotels. That's billions and billions of dollars. You have airlines canceling their previous guidance on what their numbers are looking like going forward. They're scaling back on flights.
Right.
What happens? Are these airlines going to need a government bailout? Are you just going to let American Airlines, Delta, you're going to let them all go bankrupt? How are they going to afford maintenance and things like that when they're not getting any of this? We were just looking at a poll the other day. 75% of overseas people say they don't want to study in the United States now. That has all kinds of impacts on the kind of people you have available to do research. We're supposed to be this entrepreneurial country. You have the major research universities like Stanford and MIT. They have labs set up to help people start businesses from the things they develop at those universities. Those people aren't going to come here. They're going to go somewhere else. They're probably going to go to Europe. Some of them are going to go to China. Some of them are going to go to Japan. They're going to go to these other countries, and they're going to get the benefit of, in some cases, the genius of some of these students who choose not to study in the United States. And that's not even to mention when the shelves start emptying out because of these tariffs, or if bond yields keep on spiking because people don't want to buy them and are quietly selling the U.S. treasuries that they have. When all of this comes together, they're going to need a police state because they're going to be fighting their own base.
Yeah, man, there's going to be chaos. I mean, widespread poverty causes widespread chaos. Absolutely. I'm cautiously optimistic of the future with all this beautiful chaos and fallout happening within the ruling class and their Zionist and fascist agendas. They're digging their own graves. Thank you, Dr. Durkin. Dedamod, the First Amendment, MSNBC could have a credentialed guest say Ukraine is winning, but off to jail if you say genocide and Israel. Crystal Waters says, are we absolutely sure Sarah Huckabee Sanders does not have a penis? There you go. Thank you, Crystal Waters. Appreciate that. That's funny. Victor Shakopoulos, but how is that hurricane from the standpoint of water? There you go. Recycling all the old Trump quotes. Monkey Rotary says, Keaton lets his children cut his hair.
His hair wrong. That's the wrong tone.
Yeah, this is better than the last one.
What's up with that?
Yeah. No, this is better than the last one. The last haircut was a bad haircut. I went to a place I don't normally go to because the place I went to was closed for some reason. Trump is not governing like he or the GOP will need to earn anyone's vote ever again. Well, yeah, that's the caveat. If you have fair elections ever again, right? Brendan McNamara, thanks for the $5. Federal payments for natural disasters provide a paper trail for the increasing cost of climate catastrophe. That data is a liability for their cause. Ava Session 7, thanks to the $4.99. Would you determine this administration to be implementing stupid fascism? Yes, absolutely. Yes, it's fascism with Cybertrucks. Pope Pizza Bola, and that's amore. Thank you, Amadeus. Brandon Guillory says expansion of prison labor for factories incoming. Thank you, Brandon. Appreciate that. All right, folks, we have one more segment on the YouTube side, and then we are going to be switching over to Rumble for the remaining two segments of the show before the Q&A. We'll have the link up after this.
All right. I have a lot to say about this. This is kind of a think piece. It's going to take a lot of twists and turns. So, Pride organizers say sponsors are pulling back amid DEI rollbacks and economic fears. So, Pride Month is coming up pretty soon. They've been shutting down a lot of DEI departments and different corporations, and predictably, a lot of them are pulling out of sponsoring Pride events. Several of the nation's largest LGBTQ Pride celebrations are down hundreds of thousands of dollars in corporate sponsorships this year, with some event organizers saying promised funds have been withdrawn or reduced, and others saying they've been ghosted by longtime corporate partners. Pride organizers say some companies fear being targeted by the Trump administration over participation in diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives, while others are preserving cash in a tumultuous economy. Quote, I know that they're facing tough decisions inside those organizations, and I don't want to call them out. I want to call them in. Suzanne Ford, the executive director of San Francisco Pride, said of disappearing sponsors. We will remember who stood by us and who didn't. When it was politically popular, they were lined up. Hold that thought. Eve Keller, co-president of USA Prides, a national network of LGBTQ Pride organizers, said members across the country have reported receiving significantly less in sponsorship dollars this year. Some of these smaller rural prides are down 70 to 90% when compared to the average year, she said. Quote, we're trying not to sound a huge alarm or to make this the only focus, but when we are down money, we're down safety and security and accessibility as well, she said, adding that most prides don't want to make any cuts to their security measures, so instead they're holding fewer and smaller events. Okay, so the tone of the article and the tone of coverage that you're going to get on this in general is, oh, how terrible that these corporations are not supporting Pride anymore. I would argue that you have a tremendous opportunity to free your movement from the corporate vampires that have hijacked it and use that community as a human shield to deflect from conversation about their corporate practices, much to the detriment of the public image of that community. It has caused that community to be associated with the bosses. You can't have a liberation movement associated with the bosses that exploit labor. So we'll get into that. So Suzanne Ford, who was quoted in that article, gets paid $155,000 to put together this parade. So if you look at the other pretty high-ranking people there, the treasurer and the president, they do what I would consider the right thing for what's presumably a community-oriented charity. They the president takes $0. The treasury takes $250. Why are you taking $155,000? Wouldn't it maybe be you're worried about security? Maybe take a salary cut. Maybe take $50,000. $50,000 seems reasonable to do that. This is the least egregious example of where this money goes. So Eric Hoffer, in The Temper of Our Time, very famously said, every great cause begins as a movement, becomes a business, and eventually degenerates into a racket. So look at this picture Look at this picture of people holding up this pride flag with the Amazon image on it. Does that look like a social justice movement to you? When Amazon gives all this money to these pride parades, who do you think gets this money? Do you get this money? Do members of that community get this money? Well, the idea would be, well, it filters into events. Well, a lot of it filters into people's pockets, as we'll see. Now, in terms of associating a liberation movement where you're asking people to be allies, to have solidarity with you, how do you justify associating yourself with a company that's so hostile to workers as Amazon? Is that really good for promoting acceptance and allyship with the community? What are you telling workers of your solidarity towards them? And I'm not really blaming the community. Again, it's the leaders who are getting rich off of these corporate sponsorships who I think have driven things in this direction. But the fact that these corporations are pulling out, that's not something I think that should be reversed. That's something that should be embraced. And I think, as we'll see, there are a lot of members of that community who would feel the same way. Amazon fosters unsafe warehouses. Exclusive, I feel like I'm drowning. Survey reveals the toll of working for Amazon. Amazon faces NLRB complaint as Teamsters push for negotiation rights. So if your whole thing is you're asking people to express solidarity, how's that going to work? How are you going to get people to stand up for you and then hold an Amazon flag in a picture? Doesn't work. There are much worse sponsors than Amazon. There are a lot of arms dealers who also sponsor Pride. Now, this is something that is undercovered. If you get into this and you're somebody who's on the left, who's always lamenting the way the liberals are represented in the media as representing the left, and the Democrats are jumping out in front and pretending they're the left, it's very much the same in the gay community. There are a lot of people in that community who don't like this shit, but they're not profiled. They're not featured. DC Pride Parade has just been interrupted by this banner blocking the Lockheed Martin float. So there are people trying to shut this down. Here's the Lockheed Martin float at Pride. This was pretty infamous. This got around a lot. But as you can see, this is 2023. That was when people seemed to have really noticed it. But that action that we showed, that was back in 2017. So this was going on for quite a while. And it's not just Lockheed Martin. Here's Northrop Grumman getting in on the action. I'll take out the music just in case. We've had problems with things we would not expect to get flagged on. So there they are in South Dakota, promoting their Pride bona fides. And once again, just using that community to cover up what they actually do. Now, one of the worst offenders, Human Rights Campaign, not coincidentally, look at their compensation. Wow. President gets $704,000 plus other compensation, almost $750,000. VP, $355,000. The COO, $349,000. So that's where a lot of this money goes. Now, worse than that, and this is the largest self-described group representing that community. They actually had, as a platinum donor, as a platinum member, they have different rankings, Northrop Grumman. And people did come out and protest. So here you see, folks may be puzzled why protesters tried to block the HRC float at the LGBT Pride Parade. It's because the ostensibly progressive group is on the platinum level take from arms manufacturer Northrop Grumman, despite the fact the company's bombs are sold to Israel and used to slaughter Palestinians. Shame on you, HRC. Okay. And not only that, they actually went to HRC's headquarters to protest.
Human rights organization funded by companies furthering a genocide. Right now, you can see crowds around here gathering as a protest is forming outside the Hilton Hotel. Protesters say they're here as LGBTQ plus members taking action against one of the most revered queer organizations because of its relationship to corporations complicit in the genocide in Palestine.
My name is Rend. My pronouns are she and her. I identify as a Palestinian queer. I'm also Muslim.
Hello, my name is Noel Daya. I'm 22, identify as queer. I'm Jordanian, Palestinian, and Syrian.
Bunch of queer folks behind me, allies, Palestinians, people from all walks of life are here to essentially bring attention to the fact that HRC is complicit in the genocide of Palestinians in Gaza by way of their financial relationship with Northrop Grumman, which is a weapons manufacturer that has been and is today sending weapons to Israel to genocide Palestinians.
We absolutely cannot stand by celebrating funding a genocide and receiving funding from those who are quite literally dropping the bombs, creating the missiles, creating the components for the fighter jets that are killing Palestinians right now.
Okay, so you don't see that represented in the media. I'm in this space and I take more interest in these kinds of cultural conflicts than a lot of people in the space do. And I never saw that. I never saw that until I really started digging into it and doing the research. It is very much the parallel of what's happened in the left on the whole. People who are real left, socially conscious in a meaningful way, labor-oriented, anti-war activists are invisibilized. And the people who represent a very decadent version of leftism that's really about self-expression and an ever-expanding panoply of lifestyle choices, those people are pushed out front. People who have the privilege to have the kind of politics where you're going to hold up an Amazon flag with pride on it as if there's no contradiction in asking for solidarity while allowing that company to use you as a human shield. There is a very large segment of that community that's not down with that shit, but they're invisibilized. You really don't see them represented in the conversation. Want to add anything before I move on?
No, that's okay. I mean, I have something, but I could wait.
All right. So GLAAD is another one. GLAAD is another one of these. And again, wow, look at what the president gets, man. Over $800,000. Deputy president doing pretty well, $350,000. See, this is why they want these corporations to keep giving them money, because it's going into their pockets. It's making people rich. Are the people in the community getting this money? They're not getting this money. You might say, well, it's for events. Wouldn't it be better to do less events that are not morally compromised by partnership with some of the world's most evil corporations? Wouldn't that be better? Go to a more volunteer model. Get these people completely out of the way. How much of that money is from people's individual donations? You could still get that, right? Maybe downscale it a little bit. Maybe do a call to the community. Hey, we need more volunteers than ever because we don't want to take this corporate money. It looks to me like you'd have a lot of people who would answer the call if you did that. Now, New York Times did an expose, a pattern of lavish spending at a leading LGBTQ nonprofit. GLAAD paid for its chief executive to fly first class, rent a Cape Cod house, and remodel her home office. It may have violated IRS rules. This is why these people want this money. This is why they want these corporations to continue to partner. And this is why they didn't care about how this would tarnish the image of the community to partner with people like Northrop Grumman and like Amazon. They didn't care about that because they don't actually care about that community. We're well past the movement stage and the business stage. We're well into the racket stage with a lot of the actors in that space. Now, I just wanted to throw this in to make it clear. I'm not saying don't donate to any groups that are oriented towards this community. They're not all like that. Here's Pride St. Louis. They don't take any money. I found that was typical of the smaller organizations, whereas the ones in the big cities, not surprisingly, is where you get the big grifters. So I'm not saying all these organizations are corrupt, but the bigger ones seem to be. So now, what has the impact of this been? Now we've talked at times about the trans issue, which in my opinion, a lot of the more extreme manifestations of that even people in this community largely don't agree with, especially when it gets into kids and sports and things like that. I have long been of the belief that these NGOs, these non-governmental organizations, these not-for-profits, have largely pushed that, and particularly when you look at their executive compensation. After gay marriage passed, well, how are they going to continue to live the lavish lifestyle to which they're accustomed? Because their fundraising largely depends on generating a sense of emergency and being under threat. They are in large part at cross purposes with the community they claim to represent. Because if that community really gains the total acceptance that obviously is what most people would want, they're out of a job. They're out of business. So they are highly motivated to constantly find hot button issues that will trigger conservatives so that they can fundraise off it. They are not interested in acceptance. They're interested in constantly generating controversy. You'll never get to a place with organizations that are motivated by the level of fundraising they can take in, who are really going to care about the community. And the proof is in the pudding. Why are they taking money from Northrop Grumman? That's a good look. So same-sex relations. Now, this is the good news. Marriage is still supported by most in the U.S., but not surprisingly, support among Republicans has gone down. Now, I think that is largely the doing of these organizations, and connecting the movement in the mind of the public with actors like Amazon. You put it's allowed the right wing to cast that community as being part of the neoliberal agenda.
Right, the World Economic Forum.
The World Economic Forum, the globalists, exactly.
The depopulation, the blah, 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 yeah.
Right. Now, surprisingly...
The own nothing and be happy. Whereas MAGA is own nothing and be angry. Be angry. Yeah. Own nothing and be permanently aggrieved. Own nothing and be aggrieved.
Now this is the good news. Even after all of this, which I think has been terrible for the image of the gay community. Even after all of this, a solid majority still find same-sex relations morally acceptable. And even the downtick among Republicans is not as bad as I would have thought it would have been before I did the research. As with support for same-sex marriage, Democrats 81%, and to a lesser extent independents 68%, are more likely than Republicans 40% to say relations between gays or lesbians are morally acceptable, whereas a majority of Democrats have thought same-sex relations are morally acceptable since 2006. No more than half of Republicans have said the same throughout Gallup's trend, except for 3 readings: 51% in 2020 and 2021, and 56% in 2022. The current 41-point gap between Democrats and Republicans ties 2011 as the largest on record. So, yes, there is a big fall off in support from Republicans. I would argue it is partly tying the brand in the public mind to globalism, to Amazon, even to Pfizer, as we will see, as one of the sponsors of HRC.
I would argue that number would be higher on a secret ballot. Just saying.
Well, you can only run those in a urinal. So can you imagine Trump doing this now? Can you imagine him this is Trump in 2020, holding up a pride flag. Would he ever do this now? So this is what I'm saying, man. These organizations that purport to represent that community have done nothing but hurt that community and enrich themselves doing it. Because this is very bad for business for them. This is very bad for business. They don't want the Republicans to accept the gay community. That doesn't bring in the checks. Oh, legislation passing in red states limiting rights for drag queens. That's where you make your money. If there is no draconian legislation being passed against gay people, well, they have to instigate it. How else are they going to raise money? Right? You write them a check when there's a sense of emergency. And
I remember Peter Thiel in 2016 got that huge ovation at the RNC. He said, "I'm a proud gay man, a proud Republican, and a proud American," or something, and they gave him a huge ovation. Yeah.
Right. That's not good for business for these people. And it's, this is not just in this sector of social justice movements. It's all of them. They busted, Ibram X. Kendi, $40 million went missing at his institution. It's all a misleadership class that is really ill-serving the people they claim to represent. So this is some of the human rights campaign. Now Northrop Grumman is no longer listed on their sponsors. So I think they got scared off that. But you still have Amazon is on there, JP Morgan Chase, Apple, Pfizer, which forget about it. You think you're gonna get the conservatives. You better not have Pfizer as a sponsor. So just absolutely no concern for the public image of the community that they claim to represent. Now, this is a history that has largely been erased. I'm sure a lot of people who are in that community, particularly the radicals in that community, are well aware of this history. Very much like with the left and the liberals, there is this divide in the gay community where you have certain people who went with the idea of gay rights as acceptance within bourgeois liberalism. And that's actually kind of become the cliche of gay people today, right? In a suburb with nice manicured lawn and that kind of thing. That very much like the liberals are pushed out front as representing the left, there is this older tradition of gay rights movements being closely tied to socialist and communist movements. And that's almost been, just like it has been on the left, it's almost been memory hold that that's what these movements really originated in. So just a little bit on that. Gays have been involved in the struggles for the emancipation of the working class as revolutionary agitators, labor organizers, and partisans of socialist, communist, and anarchist movements since the days of the Paris Commune and the First International, when for many, those three categories were interchangeable. The first significant support the gay civil rights received in world history came at the end of the 1890s from the flagship Marxist Socialist Party of the Second International, the German Social Democratic Party. This is the first party to ever put forth anti-discrimination legislation for gay people. Harry Hay, who was a pioneer in gay rights in America, stood up against the House Un-American Activities Committee. He was a member of the Communist Party. Harry Hay never stopped fighting for gay liberation using the Leninist tactics and strategies that he had first learned in the 1930s, the building of effective organizations as part of a broad, inclusive People's Front to advance the struggle. Called before the House Un-American Activities Committee in 1955, one should remember that homophobia was cultivated by McCarthyites as a companion to their generic red baiting. He stood up to the committee, treating them with the contempt they richly deserved, although he felt bitter that it was difficult to get left attorneys to represent him because of his open homosexuality. And this is really what you see here. Hay became an active critic of the mass gay rights movement, which emerged in the 1970s, particularly its penchant for involving itself in narrow interest group politics and supporting traditional Democratic Party politicians in what was a sort of political protection racket. Yes, there was a split between this more socialist, militant, labor-oriented, Marxist gay rights movement and the lib gay rights movement, just like what happened with the left, where the libs went one way and the actual traditional left remained, fighting the traditional left causes. That's what you see here. The gay rights, the representation of gay rights that Harry Hay was against, ate the movement, at least in the public mind. And that's how you wind up with a gay pride parade being represented by a union busting organization like Amazon, or being represented by arms manufacturers like Northrop Grumman. So I would argue the last thing you want is to shame these corporations into coming in. With the activist faction of this movement, this is a great opportunity to drive that out, to drive these corporations out, and to reclaim it for what it originally meant. I'm not saying you have to become a member of the Communist Party. I'm not myself, but orienting more towards the labor solidarity that it was rooted in, I think would I met many people out at Worker Strike Back just now in Seattle who were members of that community who were much more coming out of that tradition. So now, the final objection you might get to something like that is, well, how are we going to have these pride parades? It's part of how our community comes together and celebrates. Well, you know what, man? In New York, we have the biggest Halloween parade, I believe, in the world. And it is almost entirely dependent on people showing up with their own creativity, their own costumes. 2 million people attend. It has 50 to 60,000 attendees. And it's on as massive a scale, I think, as any pride parade in the country. This is them doing Thriller at last year's pride parade. Can't use the music, obviously. Does this look like a small event? Look like something that that you wouldn't be proud of? And they don't go to Amazon. They don't go to these corporations. I'm going to share a list of the sponsors for this. And
this footage is from New York City Photos YouTube channel. You should check them out for more New York scenes.
There you go. Okay, so where is it? It's next to me, right? All right, so here you go. Oh, I have to take it down.
Yeah, you got to take the video down first.
All right, so they do have sponsors. They do have sponsors. Who are the sponsors, though? Local. Spectrum. All right, Webster Hall, it's a local club. Local radio stations. Rubenstein Foundation, that's a little bigger. Here is a local theater. I'm surprised they have that kind of money. Monster Energy Company, Costume Cult, some Broadway shows, right? Party City, they're probably not blowing up any kids in Gaza. It's all right. Lilac Chocolates, that's a local brand, local. Goes back to the 20s. Yep. You got some support from the city. So if you can do that with local sponsorships, I don't see any reason you can't do a pride parade with local sponsorships. So I felt like it's important to talk about this because you're going to get a lot of this spin right now from the same kinds of people who turned the pride parade into what it is today, which is essentially a human shield for a lot of the worst corporate actors in the world, which, as you could see from those demonstrations, a lot of the community would love to wrest it from that. Here's your golden opportunity. Here's your golden opportunity. While they're running scared from the Trump administration and they don't want to be involved, push them out the door.
Yeah, and I would say you should push them out the door because, as these corporations prove all the time, they actually have no principles. So when the woke backlash comes back and it's President Rachel Levine in 2029, they'll come back to the pride. Like if you let them back, they'll come back.
Sure.
Right? They don't actually care. They don't care. They just want to be cozy with.
They just want to use you.
And so if woke is the zeitgeist, they'll go woke. If anti-woke is the zeitgeist, they'll go anti-woke. Doesn't matter to them. They don't have convictions of any kind.
Right. They never supported you.
Right.
They never supported you. And that is the strongest argument for refocusing back to the roots of the movement and class and worker solidarity, because that group is actually ideologically aligned with you. These corporations are not ideologically aligned with anybody. They'll go along with anybody who's going to slip money in their pockets. That's it. Once you become bad for business, you're out.
Exactly. All right. Let's go to a quick word from Rumble Premium right now before we continue on with things. So this sponsorship is from Rumble, and it's one that's incredibly important to the survival of the company. When Rumble first started in 2013, they built the platform for the small creator. They didn't censor or have biases. They were fair and treated all creators equally. No one thought platforms would censor political conversation or censor opinions on issues like COVID, but they did, and Facebook admitted they fell to such pressure from the Biden and Harris administration. Rumble did not, though. They held the line, and they're attacked daily for giving shows like us a platform to talk to audiences like you. They're attacked in corporate media, attacked by governments like France. They're attacked from brand advertisers who refuse to work with them. So while corporate America is fighting to remove speech, Rumble is fighting to preserve it. But Rumble won't survive with brand advertisers because they don't get many of them. So watching our show on Rumble is the most they can ask from you. But if you really believe in the fight and you have the means, one major way you can help Rumble survive is by joining Rumble Premium, which is the ad-free version of the platform. So join the community that believes in the First Amendment and believes in our human right to free speech. Rumble is offering $10 off with the promo code STUDIO when you purchase an annual subscription. So go to rumble.com/premium and use promo code STUDIO. Like I said, if you have the means and believe in the cause, now is the time to join Rumble Premium. If you don't have the means, we are, of course, just happy if you watch us on the platform. Okay, great. We're going to take some super chats here. We will get to all Rumble rants on the Rumble side because we have plenty of show, folks, left. We got 2 more segments. We got segments that we're very excited about doing. So that's dudissidents.com/Rumble. If you're watching on YouTube, that link will take you right to this stream. Thanks, Jake, for making that link for us. So start heading over there now, folks, so you don't miss any of the show. We have a song and an intermission, so a bit of an extended intermission. The song will play on the YouTube side, the intermission on the Rumble side. Kuznetsky Bassane says, building my bunker house in China. Thank you, Kuznetsky Bassane. Amadeus, those with everything to lose will never understand those with nothing to lose. If people fight over TVs on Black Thursday, imagine famines. Thank you, Amadeus. Charles H. says, it's vacuum up economics and trickle down corruption. Thank you for that. Steve Bertram says, Jimmy recently lost the plot with regards to Trump for a while, but found it again. Feels like y'all have lost it in the other direction. Hope you find it again because I like you both too much to stop watching. I hate both sides, but it's starting to feel like you don't. You know, it's funny. We got the exact same feedback for 3 years when Biden was president, that we only hated Democrats and didn't hate Republicans. Like, that's the exact same feedback we got.
Like, I mean, come on, man. Look, dude.
Well, people said that about us all the time when we would criticize Democrats because they were the ones in power fucking the world up.
We get that all the time in the fucking comment section. Like, it's a problem now because clearly, I mean, look, just say you like Trump, you like his crew, and you don't like that we're going after him, man. Be honest. It's not about us. It's about you.
No,
it's about what you like. Now different people are in power. What are we going to talk about? Biden?
Yeah,
why would we talk about Biden?
We talked about him actually for a few minutes at the top because the media, to take the piss out of the media a little bit. But But yeah, I mean, we
If
criticized Biden when he was in power.
If there were a lightning strike that somehow made, I don't know, Nancy Pelosi the president or something, took out everybody else in the line of succession, believe me, we'd be all over her.
Yeah, no, people used to say that about us all the time. Richard Namulala says, Russ, when do you leave Buffalo? Let's get a drink. Send all social inquiries to dudissidents@gmail.com. Shelvin Knight, thanks for the $20. The thing is, capitalism and communism have failed repeatedly. What do? Anarchy is what I want. And please tell me you beautiful, educated boys know what I mean.
Well, you know what? I was going to say this. So I don't want to guarantee it, but it's probable. They have an open mic at Nietzsche's on Tuesday, and I'm probably going to do the open mic. So I don't want to guarantee it. So don't go there if I'm not there and be like, oh, motherfucker, say he was there. Oh. But I'm probably going to do it.
Oh, there you go. All right. And as for Skelvin Knight, anarchism, yeah, look, I mean, I like I said, when it comes to theory and stuff like that, I don't like to get into the weeds of it. But I will say, when you look at the constraints of the system, I understand the case for libertarianism within these constraints more and more now. That I'm sure you would say anarchism is different, but I hear you say. Thank you, Skelvin, pardon me. Didn't mean to mispronounce your name. Okay, we're going to take a couple Rumble rants on this site. Ex-Barbarian states will never have the resources for this. Only the Fed can print money to help those in these catastrophes. This will hurt the MAGAs the most, but also us, which sucks. Thank you, Ex-Barbarian. Agreed. Suggested name for Pizza Ballo when he wins, Poperoni, the vicar of crust. I like that. Ha. Good one. Mary Rotary says, it's my birthday on May 3rd. I hope I get to actually watch the show on Thursday. Here's $1. Oh, thank you and happy birthday, Monkey Rotary. Appreciate that. All right, folks, we're going to get to the rest of the show on the Rumble side. You're not going to want to miss it. We have the shark attack, and we have the strange passing, shall we say, here in East Berlin of Virginia Giuffre. So we have plenty more. Giuffre, pardon me. I should get her name right now. It would be disrespectful to get her name right at this point. So dudissidents.com/Rumble is where you go to catch the remainder of this stream. We are going to do an intermission, which Russell edited together, a tribute to Catholicism. But before we do that, we're going to play a song for you guys by an artist. Hold on. I remember his name. Let me just see. It says right here. Dissident Trap. That's right. So this is a song.
Dissident.
Oh, Dissident. Oh, perfect. Oh, stupid. Look at me. I didn't even get what he was doing there. Dissident Trap. Dissident. I thought it was, yeah. Okay, so
Dissident.
That's what I thought. I didn't realize he was going for dissident, but there you go. Dissident. I didn't even catch that.
But are you sure you want to be a professional code breaker?
Yeah, exactly. All right, so Dissident Trap. There you go. So this is a song called Peasant Mind, which is inspired by our show here. And so he wrote this song. He posted it about a week ago. He shared it with us. And so we figured we would play it on Sunday night when we have the most audience. And we hope you guys enjoy it. So we're going to play this on the YouTube side. Then we're going to switch to Rumble for the intermission. So we'll leave the link up, dudissidents.com/Rumble. We will see you over there in about 8 minutes. The song's about 3.5 minutes, and then the intermission is 5 minutes. So please join us over on Rumble. If you're not cool, be safe and be well. But please come hang out with us for the rest of the show and Q&A. So callers, please hold off on calling until we give you the green light over there. But here is Dissident Trap with their song Peasant Mind. Enjoy.
Yeah. They praying to them people in suits like they gonna save us or something. Nah, let's talk. Yeah. You love them folks that don't know your name, clapping loud for the ones who play the game. Think he rich cause he wise, nah he cold. He just sold y'all lies, dressed them up in gold. Got you fighting your own, saying this one real. But he up in a penthouse, signing that deal, smiling on TV, talking all sweet. But he don't walk where you drag your feet. You call that hope, I call it fear. Looking for daddy cause the truth too near. Still waiting on a hero like one gon' come, but they the reason you still on the run. Peasant mind, got you blind, kissing kissing they boots like they divine, running in circles, wasting time while they sipping wine and building minds. They don't love you, they love control. Better wake up before they take your soul. You reppin' colors like they your crew. Red, blue, whatever, still playing you. Fighting for scraps like dogs in the yard. Why they buy jets with your damn charge car? They tell you trust, you tell them yes. They tell you wait, you give your best. They break your back, then give you praise, just enough to keep you in that daze. Need somebody to lead, why not us? Why we always putting rich folks in trust? Why we waiting for permission to move? They ain't saving nobody, they just move. Peasant mind, got you blind, kissing they boots like they divine, running in circles, wasting time while they sipping wine and building minds. They don't love you, they love control. Better wake up before they take your soul. Ooh, they don't care about your rent, they don't care if your stomach empty. Long as you quiet, long as you loyal, you just part of their machine. So now I ain't kneeling, I'm building a plan with folks that look like me, work like me, stand. No more kings, no more pleas, no more praying while they feast with ease. We the power, we the root, time to march in real boots. Peasant mind, that ain't me. I see clear now, finally free. Peasant mind, no, not mine. Ain't no savior, this our time.
Please clap.